Meeting of the Veterinary Medical Board to order. Ethan will call the roll.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Present.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Here.
Dr. Nunez.
Here.
Jennifer Laredo.
Here.
Kathy Bowler.
Here.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Alana Yanez.
So we have established a quorum. This is the time for introductions. Members of the public, if they would like to introduce themselves. This is voluntary, but if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Grant Miller, CDMA. Ken Pulowski, CDMA. Stuart Heckman, I'm a resident of Los Alamos.
Christy Pulowski, MBC.
Kevin Russia, CDMA.
Member of SDPTA and UC Davis.
Good morning, Patrick Lee, Department of Consumer Affairs. John Klingborg, NBC.
Thank you. Before we start, I really want to thank Ethan. In this period of time since Anne-Marie resigned as our executive officer, Ethan has really stepped up and really is doing two jobs. So he's been a great help to me. Of course, you know, I'm a working person, so the time I have to do VMB stuff is at night and on weekends, and I'm texting him, emailing him, and I'm thinking, okay, he can just wait till Monday to answer me, but no, he keeps answering me. So anyway, thank you, Ethan.
You're welcome. Not a problem.
We are going to change the order of the agenda just a little bit. During agenda item number 5, where we're discussing the MDC report, we're also going to discuss the regulation that's in 11B subset 3. And Dr. Klingborg will go into that more about why we're going to discuss that then. So 11B3 is going to be moved up to include that with agenda item number 5. So we're now go to agenda item number 3, review and approval of the February meeting minutes. And for the corrections that I saw was on page 1, Gary Richter, DVM, is not representing the CVMA, so if we could take that out. And on page 3, the bottom line, I think that should read that the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act mandates that veterinarians provide records. It shouldn't be a summary of records. It say provide records. It can be a summary, but it doesn't have to be a summary. So does anybody else have any other corrections? Dr. Sullivan?
On page 6, below the first bullet point, I think that should be Dr. Grant Miller and not Dr. Grant. I don't think Dr. Grant was here at that time.
Okay. Any other corrections from the board?
Did, on page 8, this is just for my, you probably, if you did it, I'm sure, and I read it, I'm sure. Did, where we have recommended that we send an AABSB a memo or letter on suggestions for interstate compact, did we do that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Is your mic on?
Oh, I don't know. I guess not.
Judy?
I don't see anywhere in here. I did ask if we were going to discuss the D-Claw bill, and I don't see that that's in here, but I just want it for the record that I did ask if we were going to discuss it.
And I have no memory of that. I wasn't even aware of the decall bill till a couple months later.
Oh,
Anybody else?
I have another change, but
Do you know anything about it?
No, I don't recall that.
Jennifer recalls, she heard me. Yeah, I asked, and it was like, I didn't get an answer.
Either I didn't hear, or I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I asked. So, anyway, it's unfortunate it didn't get captured, but we can talk about that when it
We
comes
can
up a
review
little
the,
bit. Yeah,
we can review the,
it's definitely, I definitely asked. I
Yeah, so
said,
we can
we gonna
review
talk about
the-
the declaw bill? And it just kind of fell on silence, and I remember you guys kind of looked at each other, and it was like, I didn't get an answer. I didn't
and
get
I
an
was,
answer.
I was not aware of the
So
declaw bill
that's why I
until-
was so shocked to see Dick appear there and say we took a stand on it. It
Okay,
was
but let's
shocking.
get, we're getting
We'll
off the
get- we'll
agenda
get
right
there.
now.
We'll get there,
We're
but
getting off
it
agenda.
should be in the minutes, because I
couple
did
of
ask.
So
typos.
we'll review the,
I'll be happy to.
the webcast.
Okay.
Kathy's finishing up.
On page 12, it's the, I think about the fourth paragraph, Ms. Delmanio iterated, but I think it's reiterated. Well, maybe it is iterated now that I'm looking at it. Iterated, no, yeah. And then I think on page 17, the final vote probably was not 6-0, because I was gone by that point, to adjourn the meeting. I had to leave a little early,
It
that,
was the ghost of Kathleen.
so it was 5-0.
5-0, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I left my vote behind.
Okay, Dr. Nunez.
Judy's question might be answered. We had our meeting on February 22nd or 21st. What date was the bill introduced? Because if it wasn't introduced yet, we couldn't have talked
was.
about it.
It was.
No,
The bill was
3013
introduced
was
like
introduced,
2
yeah.
days
There were
before
a number
the
that
deadline.
weren't.
February 16th.
It was introduced. That's why I asked about it, because I thought that it was going to come up. I was prepared to discuss it, and it was nowhere to be found. And I knew you guys would be against it, but that there would be those of us on the board that would be for it. And so I was looking for us to have that discussion, and we didn't have it. And then all of a
Okay.
sudden, Dick shows up and we're against it.
Okay,
But we'll
so-
address it a little later.
That was a
Okay,
spot
thank
bill.
you.
That was not the bill, it was a spot bill.
Okay, well, we could have got a full version from the author if we were gonna. Okay,
we'll,
go
we'll
ahead.
check the webcast.
Yeah, check that
Yes.
webcast.
Dr.
I have a
Nolan.
very minor,
Okay.
since I was not here, but my name is not spelled correctly. Would
Oh,
you like?
that would be a big one.
I just, to prevent that from continuing, it has a Y and a J-A-Y on the first page. Not an important thing, but
So any other corrections? Any comments from the public? So we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
We have a motion and a second?
Well, can we actually pass this out or approve it if we have an open
Oh.
question? So perhaps we need to defer this to the next meeting to give us
Okay.
an opportunity to check the webcast.
Good point. Okay, so we will defer this to the next meeting till we check the webcast. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 4, review and approval of the March 8th board meeting minutes. So this is a telephone conference that we had regarding hiring a new EO. Does anybody have any corrections on this? Any comments from the public? Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? So we have a, Ethan, you want to call the?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes,
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes,
Dr. Noland.
I abstain.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alana Nunez. Alana Yanez. Wow. Where'd that come from?
Yes.
Hey, all right.
Congratulations.
Sorry about that.
I think you may want to abstain.
Oh, I can, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I can abstain.
We can change that.
That's not a big deal.
Okay, motion passes. Did you get everybody?
Yep,
Okay.
good.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5, the MDC report with Dr. Klingborg.
Good morning, John Klingborg, MDC. I'd like to bring you up to speed on our meeting yesterday. We had, again, another very good meeting, very productive meeting. Our first order of business yesterday was electing a new chair and vice chair for the MDC, as we're having 4 members of the MDC term out. Yesterday was their last meeting. We chose, first of all, to only elect a new chair. We felt that with new folks joining the committee, that it was more appropriate that they would choose their vice chair, but the work must go on, so a chair needed to be chosen, and I'm pleased to announce that Dr. Jeff Pollard will be the new chair of the MDC. He's going to do a great job, and so we leave knowing that the committee's in capable hands. Our second order of business regarded the kind of ongoing discussion we've been having about shelter medicine and the need to create minimum standards for shelters. And I don't have a specific action item for you because we spent several hours really talking and trying to define the scope of what those minimum standards would cover and what they would look like. And if you want to get a sense of all of the various elements of what those minimum standards are going to look like, then look in the MDC packet, because we have captured all of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle there. And that was a lot of what we were trying to do, was just make sure that we had brought in the various elements that we needed so that we can then begin to craft language. That language will look a lot like the minimum standards language that you've just seen for other premises. And so again, we have an idea on format, we have an idea on content. It's a couple years in the making to get to this point, and it'll be just a little bit longer before we get a finished product, but I think we've narrowed things down in focus and scope, and so we've made good progress there. Our next agenda item referred to the RVT animal healthcare tasks and dental extractions. And here again, a very good discussion about whether or not there needed to be a change in RVT job tasks, whether or not, well, we compared what was happening and looked at what was happening in other states. And I think one of the things that was most powerful was David Johnson, RVT, pointed out that the dental extractions have been an RVT job test since 1980. And we have a system that's working, it's working well. There is always a need for a supervising veterinarian to do just that, and that is supervise. And as long as people are working within the letter of the law, we feel that the system is a very good one. And in the end, another good discussion, no specific action item, because what we chose to agree on by consensus was that we maintain the status quo. So those were our main items yesterday. Through omission, and this is more clerical error than anything else, as Ethan and I are trying to put together the packet, the issue of 2035, duties of a supervising veterinarian, was supposed to come back before the MDC at the meeting yesterday, and it didn't get on the agenda. I didn't catch it, and once that agenda goes out, then that's that, etched in granite. And yet, we are fortunate that it actually got on your agenda. And so there is an opportunity for us to discuss that here, if that is the desire. And Cheryl, I don't know how far we want to go with 2035
So this is
at
the,
this point.
this is the 11B3.
Mhm.
So if you could turn to that. And so Dr. Klingborg, if you could explain the process of where we are.
So the background gives you, that's in the packet here, does give you, I think, a bit of an overview. We started with,
Okay, can you hang on just a
Yes.
second? Dr. Nunez has a question.
I just had a question before you move away from dental extractions. The discussion was leaning towards leaving it as it is. What was the alternative discussion? Taking it, because it's already within that category of restricted activities. Was there a discussion about taking it out of that restricted
so
activity?
there are many different elements to, other directions one could go. And so they would involve DVMs only being allowed to do extractions, that it depended on the kind of extraction that needed to be done. Was the tooth already loose, or is there, so was there some procedure that needed to be, such as tooth sectioning before that tooth could be extracted? And so then it was about parsing out the nature of the extraction.
That would be very difficult to put in a practice act.
Yes.
Judy?
Does it cover like protocol at all? Because, I mean, I've had animals get their teeth extracted, many in my life. And one in particular, some it's a DVM, some it was a specialist, and some it was the RVT, although I didn't know at the time it could be the RVT. And since they didn't do x-rays after, the cat had stomatitis. And what happened was they left some roots in, and so the stomatitis was still there. And so he had to go back for yet a third surgery to get these roots out. And the poor thing, I had to hand feed him for 6 months, and his mouth was raw. It was a horrible thing. So I'm wondering, is there any protocol that's defined, and that if x-rays, I learned how critical x-rays are taken after. In the case of stomatitis, I don't know if always, but in this particular case, it was a big deal.
So we did not discuss those kinds of protocols at the meeting. Certainly within my own practice, I feel that x-rays are part of the standard of care. I would not do anything less than that within my own practice. But consumers do have the right to consume, and
I didn't get an option whether to have them or not, or what was the pro and con against it. The default value there was you don't do it. And it really burned me and my poor cat for 6 months after.
Stomatitis is a very challenging disease.
Unbelievable.
The reality is that we had a very specific mission yesterday. And
Okay.
it was in regards to dental extractions.
Just
So
to-
we did not.
Right, all right,
we did
that could
not
be a
begin
different
the
motion.
scope.
When we go to the MDC duties or future agenda items, that could be a future, yeah,
Because the standard of care is
Right. right. Jennifer?
Judy, because I was there yesterday, we agreed that the supervising veterinarian is ultimately responsible. So if it's a lower standard of care, it's on that vet. And I threw Dr. Sullivan under the bus. I said, if I'm working for him and I do something wrong, he's responsible. So if I did something to your pet, ultimately, he would be setting the protocols. It's his fault.
And that's what went down, right, in this case,
Yeah.
too.
Yesterday was just about extractions, that
Okay,
was,
thank you.
yes, yes, okay.
Okay.
Any other questions before Dr. Klingborg moves on to 11B3? Okay,
So this language in 2035, it started originally as a conversation we've had over a number of meetings now about RVT job tasks, and trying to create a list of tasks and that would be RVT only, or that would exclude veterinary assistants. And in the end, we've realized that the challenge with the profession changing all the time, and each case being dynamic and unique, that list making is not nimble and it's not very effective. And so we were trying to find a way to strengthen, if you will, the duties of the supervising veterinarian so that the delegation was as appropriate as possible. There were 4 different elements here in delegating that we had originally considered. Only 2 made it into the packet And again, that's language that I had offered to you in my report. This language here is language I'd offered to you in my report last time, but the report was not a finished work product of the MDC. The four elements that we had considered in terms of, the four elements that a supervising veterinarian we felt should consider before delegating an allowable animal health care task were 1, extensive clinical skill, 2, judgment, 3, training, and 4, demonstrated competency. So we wrestled with those four elements at the MDC at the previous meeting. We also grappled with whether or not the language should be positive or negative. It should be something that you may delegate or you shall not delegate. And there was no consensus. When we had some language in front of us at the last meeting, it was voted down by a 4-2 vote. And again, the intention was to bring it back to the MDC at that time. As I look at those four elements, extensive clinical skill, judgment, training, and competency, we had a very difficult time with the word judgment. And the question was, whose judgment are we talking about right now? Is it the supervising veterinarian's judgment, or is it the RVT's judgment, or is it both of their judgment? Because we may have two RVTs who are equally skilled at a particular procedure, but one RVT may be more cavalier. Let's say we're talking about getting urine out of a cat via cystocentesis, and the way that one RVT handles the syringe and needle is different than another, and one might be better suited to a particular cat's temperament than another. So again, whose judgment is that? Now, that would be the judgment of the RVT in terms of how they handle the syringe, but also the judgment of the veterinarian. In the end, we felt that we could not really work with the word judgment. It was just too nebulous, and that was not a very helpful word. The other thing is a question that I have is, what's the difference between training necessarily and clinical skill or competency? How does the word training add to this document or not? You may think it does. And so I'm here to say, those were the four things that we had discussed. We dismissed judgment in our meeting. You may choose to bring it back. You may like training. This language, as you can see in front of you, that is called 2035D, a supervising veterinarian shall not delegate any allowable animal health care task to an RVT, VACSP permit holder, or veterinary assistant who does not have the necessary 1, extensive clinical skill, or 2, demonstrated competency. And I inserted the word or initials VACSP because when we keep talking about permits yesterday, I was getting confused about premises permits and VACSP permits. So just for sake of clarity right now, that language, VACSP, is not in front of you. But that's where we are with this.
So we have two versions of this, one that has been voted on once at the MDC and voted down. We have a second version that ended up not getting back to the MDC where it was originally intended to go. So the question is, do we send it back to the MDC now, or do we just vote on it? Vote on it now by the board. Dr. Nunez?
There's only one version in the package, or there's two?
Where's the second
There's-
version?
Is a second with 4?
So I have the second version.
You do?
For your review, yeah.
Yeah, let's look at the second version, and it seems like we should be able to decide on this.
Yeah.
Especially, we got a full board today. So many of us. Maybe we should. And then we should vote instead of sending it back for somebody else to do our work.
Yeah. Ethan, you want another one? Ethan. Here's an extra.
So the one that failed at the MDC is the one that has 3 items at the bottom of the page. And
And
3 items under
it's
D.
also positively written rather than negatively.
Yes, and
Where, is the only difference that there's 3 or 2, or is there a
and
difference in the body somewhere?
D is different also. So one is permissive and one is,
Oh,
so it says may delegate, or the other version says shall not delegate.
I see.
Dr. Nunez?
I kind of do like the word training, because to me, clinical skills just implies that they've done it a lot in a practice situation versus training, you've been to some courses, you kind of know how to do this procedure.
So can training be
So
the
in that sense,
hospital?
I like the version that was
Okay.
voted down.
Okay, but can training be just training in the hospital and not official courses? That's a question.
I suppose it could if there's a documentation of training within a hospital manual of some sort.
Judy?
What I would do is, I like the shall not delegate, because mays are kind of get a little sloppy in law, and shalls are much more clear cut. I think we should do the shall not language and add requisite training or explain training, because I agree with Mark. When I looked at this, extensive clinical skill, I mean, does that just mean hands-on? Does that mean in a book? Did I read about it a whole lot? Did I actually do it somewhere? So I think we should go with the shall not version. I think the may is not proper way to go, and I think adding training would be a good thing.
Kathy?
Well, I like the does not have the necessary as well, but I actually think training is vague, and it seems to me we should be as clear as we can in these things for both the vets and the RVTs and everybody. It seems to be inherent kind of in clinical skill and competency, demonstrated competency to me. That's why I thought it's kind of redundant, and unless you define training in a different way, like maybe Dr. Nunez has a different way to define it, I think it makes it adds a vagary to this that I don't think is necessary. That's my opinion.
Do we need a opinion from Tara?
We're talking about the training issue.
Yeah,
Yes.
just the word training.
There was extensive discussion about what the training was, and everyone landed on requisite training because it's just more specific, you know.
No,
Training in
I
general,
understand
or-
that's
yep.
the wording. I was just thinking, how do you
Is it too
separate requisite training from extensive clinical skill and demonstrated competency? That was just my general question.
So it doesn't strike you as duplicative?
No.
Okay.
I would say that, I mean, training is education, skill is your abilities, and competency is how well you're performing the abilities.
Okay. And it's not too vague to you?
I don't think this is vague.
Okay. Let's
Um,
get our legal opinion.
I do have some notes to make about this language.
Okay.
A, B, and C do not reflect existing law. Every mention of RVT or unregistered assistant needs to be changed to reflect existing law, which is RVT, permit holder, or veterinary assistant. That's in A, B, and C, and then we would strike in C, the second line, the word either. One thing I would also add is D2, I would add and. Because right now this list is, is it just any one of these or all of them? So I would add to 1, a semicolon, 2, semicolon, and.
Dr. Sullivan?
John, could you refresh our memory as to why the vote was 4-2 against what we have in front of us?
Well, I don't think that we had an issue again with judgment. We felt that we all were
Right.
in consensus about that. The group was split on positive versus negative.
Okay.
But then the other part was, how does one achieve extensive clinical skill or competency without having training? You don't walk up and know how to play a piano innately. it takes a while to get there. And so we felt, some of us felt there was a redundancy, but there was just not enough consensus. And again, that's why it went down to 4-2 vote.
Dr. Nunez?
Well, first of all, having hearing the comments from legal counsel, I'm appalled at this sloppy language that
It's
was
terrible.
sent to us.
Yes, yes.
But having
My
said that,
unregistered assistant wrote it. Yeah.
having said that, to answer Kathy's question about extensive clinical training versus, or clinical skills versus training, I can have a veterinary assistant that is very good at performing cystocentesis because they've had a lot of clinical experience doing that. But if they haven't had any training in anatomy, then maybe they're not aware that the descending aorta is right next to the bladder, and there's a very real risk of hitting that. To me, that's the difference between training and clinical skills.
Really good example.
And I think
it's-
that,
This debate is why we voted it down.
and I
because
think clinical
there was no
skills can be
consensus.
said as just as vague as training. If you want to like have a definition of what's training versus a definition of what clinical skills is, you can say they're both vague. But
I think Nancy wants to comment.
Nancy Early, California RVT Association. I would like to ask Dr. Nunez, what are the requisite training for veterinary assistants?
I mean,
There
that
are-
can be that's the question that Dr. Waterhouse asked. Can the training be it be done in the hospital? And I said it could be done if there's like a hospital manual of policies. I mean, we have checklists of skills that our veterinary assistants should have. And we use that as part of our evaluation process, show competency that you know how to do this and so forth. I know that that's not a part of every hospital, but I can define what training it is in my hospital.
Okay, but there is nothing in the regulations or in the statute that spells out any requirements for any training whatsoever of veterinary assistants. And so I think if you put in a statement saying requisite training, you are eliminating veterinary assistants from being able to do most tasks in a veterinary hospital because they have no requisite training. They may have extensive clinical skills after working for 20 years. They may be very competent, but there is no requisite training. And unless you're planning to put in requisite training for veterinary assistants, I don't see how you can require it.
Judy?
Then I think this language with the shall not is definitely the better language, because to Mark's point, at his hospital, he has a checklist. He makes sure that nobody is doing this stuff that shouldn't be, and it's all on him. And to your point, the other doesn't even necessarily exist. It's up to the vet. So I say we adopt the shall not, and we can add requisite training, and that can mean whatever it defers to that vet who is on the hook for this person doing this task anyway.
I don't think so, because requisite implies that there is some sort of requirement.
Well, requirement within their hospital. I mean, he's got something in his
How
hospital.
can the veterinary medical board come in and hold somebody accountable for something that has no standard?
Well, we do all the time. Check our disciplinary cases.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes, I would agree with Judy in that if the veterinarian is the one that's on the hook here, this is what we're talking about.
Right.
So if there is a complaint and there's a problem and there's an investigation, that veterinarian has to document that there is some form of training for that person to do that task. That's what this is saying. It doesn't say there's a standard out there in regulation of X, Y, and Z.
Well, I'm an advocate for IVTs, and I'm not trying to promote the use of veterinary assistants. I just think that you are creating an enormous problem, since by requiring competence, and the two other things, you are requiring that the person be competent to perform the task, that the veterinarian knows the person is competent, and I think you're asking for a whole host of problems by asking for requisite training, whether it's a statement that doesn't mean anything, there is no requirement.
But it's still on the vet, Nancy.
Exactly, it's on the
still
veterinarian.
on
The
vet.
competence and the skills are on the vet.
So it's just another thing that's on the vet. It's
But
not
that's
on the
something-
RVT. It's on the RVT, but it's the vet's responsibility to make
I'm
sure of it.
advocating for the veterinarian here, that you're putting the veterinarian in an impossible position because there is no requisite. There are no requirements for training veterinary assistants. There is a requirement that they be competent.
There better be within their hospital.
There's a requirement that they be competent.
Jennifer?
It might just be my pessimistic nature, but I like the more restrictive language that's in our packet that says the veterinarian shall not delegate. And this conversation is reminding me of the heated discussion we had about the requisite training. It's all coming back to me now. So,
And where were you on it?
I don't remember.
Well, come up with it.
What do you think now? Shall not,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, any other discussion? Any other comments from the public? We need a motion.
I want to make a motion to move the proposed language in the package with the shall not and add requisite training.
And add Tara,
I'll second that.
but there was some other language, some other,
Oh, some comments.
what the comments that Tara had said.
The language.
All that other sloppy language, it needs to be fixed.
So Tara, so I'm talking about adding permit holder, veterinary assistant.
Oh, right.
Is there anything else that needs to get changed?
Just strike either from C, and then add and after, because we want to make sure
After
that both.
competency.
After number 1. We want to make sure that both are required.
Okay. So we got all that in the motion?
All three are required.
That's all your motion?
Okay, that's my motion.
All three are required.
The all three are required. It's an and statement.
And so Judy made a motion, I'm sorry, was there a second?
I
Dr.
seconded it.
Nunez, second, okay. Any other discussion from the board? Any other discussion from the public? Okay,
So
Ethan.
this is one of those where we need, if this was to pass, we would need the 45-day notice language, et cetera. So I'll read that real quick.
okay.
The motion is to approve the proposed regulatory changes as modified, direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, authorize the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period, and if no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, adopt the proposed regulatory changes as modified.
All right. Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Jude Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alana Yanez.
Yes.
Motion passes. So do we have any motions for anything else to be put on the MDC agenda?
I'm sorry, can I go back and make sure that I didn't hear them say the word "and" in this?
Oh.
Did you catch that we were adding it? Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't catch that, I wanted to make sure.
Can we add some kind of protocol standards to this dentistry piece or something?
Or having the ability to take intraoral dental x-rays?
The x-rays, yeah.
To
I mean, I-
As a list for the MDC to discuss.
For the MDC to investigate,
Right.
discuss?
I mean, because Mark is saying, well, we do that at my clinic. Well, they didn't do it at my clinic, and I faced the consequences of it for 6 months later, and my poor little boy Bootsy. Poor Bootsy, it was like hamburger. I had to hand feed him 6 months. He's 17 years old now. He got past it, but I mean, it was
Okay.
bad times.
Okay, so is that enough?
Yes.
Motion?
Yes, could
Is there
we?
a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
May I ask for clarification?
Yes.
Are we talking about a top-to-bottom protocol, or are we talking specifically about dental x-rays as a standard of care?
I'm talking about dental x-ray standard of care. I don't think it needs to go any broader than that. Cheryl, does that sound reasonable?
That sounds reasonable to me,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And that's okay with your second? Okay. Any other discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? Yes, Dr. Nunez.
Is this the last time John's before
I
us?
was going to get to that next.
All right.
Okay, Ethan, a call for the vote?
Are we good to go? Okay, Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Kathy Bowler,
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo,
Yes.
Judy Mancuso,
Yes,
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Alana Yanes.
Yes.
Motion passes. And as Dr. Nunez alluded to, this is John's last report before the Veterinary Medical Board, because he is one of those terming off of the MDC, and we all want to thank you so much for your hard work.
Well, thank you. It's been a labor of love. Oh, God. Yeah. There were three of us, the three amigos, Diana Woodward, Hagel, Bill Grant, and myself, that turned out yesterday, along with Dave Johnson, RVT. But those three started this year-and-a-half-long limited lifespan task force 9 years ago that then became a standing committee. And hey, we're still standing, so how about that? So thank you, obviously.
Yay.
It's meant a lot to us, and I think Bill Grant summarized it well yesterday, and we said it's one of the best things I've ever done. And I completely agree with him. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, the people of California, and especially their animals, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. And we thank them.
And you're still going to, all you guys are still going to keep coming to these.
You'll see us around.
I just want to make sure, because you don't want to miss it.
Okay, on to agenda item number 6, conduct interviews for a possible appointment of applicants to the MDC. So as John just mentioned, we have 4 positions open on the MDC. We have 2 veterinarians, 1 RVT, and 1 public member. In December and January, the executive committee, which is Dr. Sullivan and I, along with Anne Marie, held pre-screening phone interviews for all applicants who applied for appointment to the MDC. 7 were selected, and since then, 2 have withdrawn. So Dr. Ron Kelp has withdrawn, and Christy Crick has withdrawn. So now we have the rest of the people that we're going to interview today. But before that, let me go further here. So there's currently 1 opening for an RVT. This term would begin upon appointment and go through June of 2020. There are also 2 veterinarian and 1 public member opening. These terms would begin in July 2018 and go through June of 2021. Now, besides that, Christy Pulowski, RVT, is eligible for reappointment to her position on the MDC, and she has submitted a letter of intent to continue her service on the committee. MDC terms are 3-year terms, and members may serve 2 consecutive terms. So first, we're going to vote on reappointment of Christy, and she is here today if anybody has any questions.
yes.
Mr. Nunez.
Motion to reappoint.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
We have,
Can we have Christy come up and say a few words?
Christy, would you like to come up?
I was going to ask her if she prepared any hors d'oeuvres for the occasion.
It's
Hello.
It's unregistered assistant, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know. Thanks, Dawn, for that. I know. I love
I'd like to hear from you, why are you on it, and why do you want to continue to be on it?
Oh, because I've been coming to these for how long?
Why?
Forever. I did
Why?
it for myself because I love this. This is what I do. I have a passion for this. And you guys just love seeing me, right? So, no, I'm here. I'm here to stay. As long as you'll have me, I will continue coming because I want to do this for the consumers, I want to do this for the profession, and I want to be here. So, anything else, you can ask me. Whatever.
You got a new
Yeah.
hairdo, right?
Since you've been on the board for so long, do you have any other issues you think that the MDC should address at some point?
I don't.
you thought about it?
I don't have anything. I think that we need to continue, obviously, going down, addressing anything that comes up with the consumer. I don't have anything that I have no personal agenda. So it's nothing, there's nothing personal for me.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public?
Well, so can I ask, yeah, I do have a question. So there's 2 RVT positions, and one she already occupies, and we're voting to reappoint her, so then we're only going to be bringing on 1 new
Correct.
RVT, correct? Okay, got it.
Okay, call for the vote?
Ready? Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Kathy Bowler?
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo?
Yes.
Judy Mancuso?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Alani Inez?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Good luck, Christie. Okay, so now we'll move on to the new appointments to the MDC. And so we'll talk to the veterinarians first. Dr. Lazuchev is first on the list here. So do we have questions?
Yep. These are the RBT questions.
Where's the veterinarian? Oh, there. Okay, so let's get this. Let's figure out who wants to. Judy wants to ask a question. Judy, do you want to ask a question? Okay, so you do number 1. Judy, you do number 2.
Okay.
Mark, do you want to ask a question? No, he's reading. Do you want to ask, do you want to do number 3? Alana, you want to do question number 4?
Sure.
Okay. Dr. Nolan.
Welcome, Dr. Lazuchev. Thanks for coming. Could you tell us why you're interested in this position?
I think it's to continue on with work I've already been doing. I really enjoyed being part of the premise task force.
I think the mic's in my.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
Better.
How about that?
Yeah.
I think I'd like to continue on with work I was already doing. I enjoyed sitting on the premise task force that the CVMA had. That type of work is important to delineate all the stuff that's out in the gray area of our Practice Act. I initially thought that I would be somewhat opposed because this particular board is more on the consumer side of things, but I realized that ultimately what benefits the consumer benefits the profession. And I think working to those ends would only improve not only what we do as a profession, but what I do personally.
Hi, Doctor. How do you feel your education and experience have... How do you feel your education and experience have...
Wait, that's not the question.
It's the last page.
Last page. I thought you said number 2.
That's, first page is for RVTs.
Oh, sorry, one moment, please. Okay, all right, I'm back. Are you familiar with the functions of a licensing board committee and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
Oh, yeah. I've been practicing in this state for, I think, since 94, 95, but for the last 8 years, I've been with the CVMA, and I'm currently presiding over that organization. I'm pretty well acquainted with what this licensing board does, its authority, its oversight.
Thank you.
Okay, mine next. So can you think of any positions you hold or activities you're currently involved in that might present a conflict for you in serving as a member of the MDC and thus a representative of the Veterinary Medical Board?
My current position with the CVMA would be a conflict, but I'm going to be out of that position in June and off that board as well. So after that, I don't think there would be any conflict of interest.
All right, is there anything else you would like to share with the board?
Dr. Klingberg suggested I do a haiku. How do I answer such complicated questions? I am just tongue-tied. Thank you.
Are we able to ask our own questions?
Yeah, is there?
Legal counsel would not probably approve of asking your own questions. Why do you?
Would not?
If they're appropriate? Okay.
I was just wondering, what kind of veterinary medical issues might be in your community that are different from other parts of the state?
My community, I work in a small community outside Yosemite, but one of the bigger issues, and I see it coming before the MDC and this committee, is the cannabis issue. I think the CBD question I get all the time. We've got a few hippies around. And that's going to become more and more prominent. We have current legislation coming up with that, and once that statute regulation will be involved, and I think the MDC will have some issues related to discussion and recommendation and all that.
Thank you. That was appropriate, huh?
I have a question for legal counsel. He said he's currently on the CVMA and it is a conflict. Does there need to be a distance of time before he can be appointed after leaving CVMA?
I don't know offhand, not to my knowledge. I don't think there's a delay. I mean, I would say that typically it would be the reverse. If someone holds a state official position, there should be a period of time before they go into a lobbying position. But this is the reverse of that.
Okay.
Registered lobbyists can be board members. So,
Okay.
Kathy Bowler.
I'm not a lobbyist.
Oh,
So,
Don't look at me.
Is it an appropriate question? Can I make a note here? Please write your questions down so that we can ask the same question of the other,
Oh, okay.
yeah, veterinary. Okay, the veterinarian applicants and potentially the public member.
So how did you state that? Is there any,
Is there any,
How did you state it?
veterinary issues that are, that.
In your community.
Geological area in the state that may be different.
yeah.
Geologic.
Yeah, we have earthquakes.
Yes, Kathy.
I think this is also appropriate, it's just the breadth of practice, because I kind of look at the whole thing as value to the MDC. It looks like you have small animal practices now, or you
Yes.
have them, but you have had large animal, equine, dairy, et cetera,
Yeah,
work in
until
the.
just a few years ago, I was practicing mixed animal practice.
Okay.
Emergency medicine.
Okay, great, thank you. That okay, Tara?
Yeah, just as long as you ask the same
Yeah, I will.
question, okay.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? That's a dangerous one.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Do we do a motion?
No, we will, okay, we'll go ahead and, okay. So now we'll listen to Dr. Warner. Do we have another one?
Hello, Meg Warner.
Welcome, Dr. Warner. I'll ask the first question.
Thank you.
Why are you interested in this position?
Well, I think that the way that consumers are consuming everything is changing very rapidly. And I'm excited to be part of the change that's happening with veterinary medicine and how the consumer chooses to consume veterinary medicine, if you will. I'm very passionate about veterinary medicine. I've been a practitioner for 30 years, and it's time for me to give back to my profession. So I think this is an exciting way to do that.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Warner. Are you familiar with the functions of a licensing board, committees, and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
Yes, I am. I've been a practicing veterinarian for 18 years in the state of California. I've practiced in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota as well. So I have some comparing and contrasting, but I am very aware of the licensing activities.
Thank you.
Okay, can you think of any positions you hold or activities you are currently involved in that might present a conflict for you serving as a member of the MDC and thus representative of the Veterinary Medical Board?
Nothing that I can think of.
And is there anything else you'd like to share with the board?
I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for me to interact with colleagues and the consuming public. I'm excited about the opportunities to give back to my profession, and I would look forward to the opportunity.
Okay, so we need to ask Jennifer.
Judy?
Judy, if you can ask your question again?
Is there any special needs that you see for veterinary medicine in your area that may be different from other places in the state?
I guess I can't really think of anything in particular. I think, we're trying to look at everything from an all-encompassing 30,000-foot scope. There's going to be subtle differences within each community always, but nothing that would require anything different from a licensing standpoint.
Thank you.
And your question?
Mine is generally, in terms of the extent or breadth of your practice experience, it looks like you have had small and large animal practices, and your current practice is in small animal? Or large animal, you
I
said?
currently am a representative for a small animal pharmaceutical company.
Oh, okay.
So I do practice just on occasion in active practice. But yes, I've been a part owner in a large animal practice. I personally have not practiced large animal medicine. I've forgotten everything I learned about horses and cats. But I have been a part owner in a large animal practice.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions that might be appropriate? Okay, so we have two veterinarians applying for two positions.
Oh.
And we only had two candidates
Well, we
that,
had a third that dropped out.
I see.
We did have
Yeah, that's
a third one that was going to, that we moved on. That's all we interviewed was three, yeah, there were only three veterinarians to start with.
That applied.
Can't think, there are more RVTs, but
I thought there was, I've got
there
my,
might have been one more veterinarian.
That applied.
That
People
applied.
just didn't apply. Wow, we have to do better outreach next time. I mean, these are great candidates, don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
think that, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm just shocked that people just didn't apply. What are you putting out there in the community, John? Everybody's afraid to apply?
Yeah. Yes, that was it.
I think we need to make these meetings more fun.
we had four applicants, and it was obvious that three were strong, and the fourth one was lower quality.
Okay.
As far as experience and knowing
Experience.
what the veterinary medical board does.
Well, this
Yes.
is,
And so we moved three on, and then since then, one of those has dropped out.
Ron
Yes.
jumped. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion to accept both candidates, or do I need to do one at a time?
We need to do, Tara, can we do?
Since there are two openings and two candidates, that motion is fine.
I
Okay.
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? And call for the vote.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Kathy Bowler?
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo?
Yes.
Judy Mancuso?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Alana Yanez?
Yes.
Motion passes.
question.
Yes, Dr. Nunez.
Didn't we originally set up this committee so there wouldn't be multiple doctors leaving at the same time? And what happened to that staggering system?
Well, I think there is some staggering because there's still 4 people left on
Right.
the board. But because the people that are leaving have been there since the inception.
Dave Johnson had a grace period.
Yeah, and Dave Johnson had a grace period that he served.
There should have
Yes.
been 3. Should have been 3 coming off, but Dave Johnson, term expired last year. He was still on because we didn't have the outreach and the nomination.
Do you
So
want to somehow address this staggering, or we're going to just leave it?
I think that's for a future
Okay.
agenda item.
Put it on the agenda next time.
No.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay. So next up are the RVTs, so Leah Schufelt and Linda Tripp. So Leah, would you like to come forward? Yes.
I just have a comment for Leah and Linda. We think you two are so fantastic that we're asking you more questions than we ask the
Yes.
veterinarians.
Yes.
So
Fantastic.
no pressure.
Thanks, Jennifer.
And so we have 6 questions here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so Jennifer, Jamie, you'll go first. 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. How about that? Okay.
Welcome, thank you for being here. The first question is, are you familiar with the function of a licensing board/committee and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
I am. I've been an RVT since 2002 in California, and I've been attending these meetings of MDC and VMB since I first was interested in July of 2014. So I've seen a lot of things and how the process works with regulations and statute and those kind of things, so comfortable.
How do you feel your education and experience have prepared you for this position?
Sure. So I am a bachelor's degree RVT from Michigan State University, so I started my experience there at a large teaching hospital. While I was in school, I worked in food animal. So then after graduation, I started work out here in California at an emergency and critical care facility, and then I went to day practice for about 10 years. I still do relief and emergency, and currently I'm in specialty medicine and radiation oncology at a multi-doctor referral center. So I feel I've got a lot of varied experiences throughout veterinary medicine, and also have a lot of experience. I was the student representative for NAVTA at Michigan State, and then also joined the Michigan Vet Tech Association, and as soon as I moved to California, I became involved in the CVMA, or a member of CVMA, and involved at the local San Diego County Vet Med Association board. So,
Thank you.
I've been entrusted with the task of asking you the longest question. Recommendations made by the MDC are based on its consumer protection mandate and are not always popular with the general profession. How do you think you will be able to handle making decisions based on the needs of consumers and their pets that may be unpopular with your colleagues?
well, I guess I would kind of relate that to what I do every day as a supervisor of peers and of veterinarians. You know, they have to follow up on regulations and rules, especially in a corporate type facility that maybe aren't my personal feeling, but are the best for the group, and I certainly have to explain those things on a regular basis. So I think that I have experience in those things, both with peers and, you know, people above me as well. So I think that I can handle that.
Okay, are you familiar with current trends in veterinary medicine, and are there any issues that have affected you directly?
Yes, from being here at these meetings, certainly I keep up on trends in veterinary medicine as well as through my NAVTA membership. So there's a lot of things going on that affect both myself, all the RVTs in the state and country, as well as the veterinarians. So I think big things for me right now, the drug compounding and how that affects RVTs certainly is something that we deal with on a daily basis. Working in oncology, I also hear about cannabis on a nearly daily basis. So I think those are big things for us. And then the emergency drug orders with veterinarians and RVTs and the supervision and all those things we deal with on a daily basis. And I'm also asked often by others at my hospital and things because they know I know a bit about these things for opinions and all those kind of things. So, and really every issue discussed on the board has an RVT component and, affects consumers, so.
Do you have any issues that you would like to see the MDC address?
I think as a consumer protection agency, it's important for us to address things as they come up and also based off of any complaints and things like that. So I think the MDC is working on a lot of important things as it is, and I can't think of anything specifically in my day-to-day life that has not been working on or talked about.
And finally, is there anything else you'd like to share with the board?
I'm dedicated, hardworking. I've been around these parts for, since about 2014, coming to meetings and, showing an interest in the process. So I would be honored to be able to be a part of the committee. And I do think with, 4 members just leaving yesterday that some historical, information is good. And though I've not been on the committee, I've been around. And a lot of the same issues discussed back then are still being discussed. And so I do have kind of a bit of historical knowledge about the MDC as well. And, they do an incredible amount of work and research and things that kind of go along with my nerdy nature. And I think I could be, a good part of the committee. And I've shown that I can put the time in and take the time off work and things to come and do this. So I would really like the opportunity.
I think it's good for a medical professional to be nerdy, so. Just speaking personally, but.
Prerequisite.
Okay, were there any extra questions that we asked? Okay,
No.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, Linda.
Hi, Linda. Good morning. Welcome. Are you familiar with the functions of a licensing board/committee and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
Yes, I am. I've been an RVT going on 20-plus years now, and also have filled a role as a supervisor of RVT, so I'm very familiar of the laws that govern us.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda. How do you feel your education and experience have prepared you for this position?
I think my 30-plus years as an RVT and also in other positions as a supervisor, and now I work in compliance, have given me a great understanding of the regulatory process. In my current position, I deal with a lot of federal and state regulations. I also come from a background of research, so I think as a member of the MBC that I can bring my research skills as well as the breadth of knowledge that I've gained for veterinary medicine as well as some of the other issues that you guys deal with. I can be a very good resource for the board.
Okay. Recommendations made by the MDC are based on its consumer protection mandate and are not always popular with the general profession. How do you think you will be able to handle making decisions based on the needs of consumers and their pets that may be unpopular with your colleagues?
I think a member of the board, you'll have a voice, so you'll get to put forth an opinion. And I think if the decision is something that you don't like or you feel that those in your profession aren't going to support, I think you have to remind them of the process. Helping people understand that there is a process can also alleviate their concerns. And as Leah said, as a supervisor, you deal with this issue all the time. As a supervisor, probably for 20-plus years. So it's not something that will be foreign.
So are you familiar with current trends in veterinary medicine, and are there any issues that have affected you directly?
Yes, although I'm not a practicing RVT at the time. I stay current. I'm also a member of the Sacramento Valley Veterinary Technicians Association. I just finished a 2-year stint as vice president, and my role there was primarily promoting CE for technicians and unregistered assistants. I think in attending the Veterinary Medical Board, one of the most current issues is cannabis research, and that does affect my current position as a compliance officer. It was interesting to hear, that research is much needed, and many of the UC campuses are trying to get that research done. So even today, in my position as a compliance officer, veterinary issues are current.
Do you have any issues that you would like to see the MDC address?
I think as an advisory role, the only issue that I have is sitting through some of the meetings and in dealing with numerous federal agencies, is trying to make sure that the language is consistent. We, at the meeting yesterday, we noticed that sometimes the statute and the regs don't use the same language, and it can be very confusing. I think that I would probably try to promote that whenever the Veterinary Medical Board assigns something to the MBC, is looking at the language and making recommendations where we can clean it up as we go. I don't have any particular topics. At my point in my career right now, I don't have a personal agenda. I just feel that the skills that I've acquired could be a great resource, and I want to give back to the community.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the board?
Well, one is that I did ask for letters of recommendation from my current supervisor as well as the service chief I worked under for many years in the veterinary medical hospital. Unfortunately, they didn't submit them in time for the agenda. I do have them here if you wish to look at them. I did bring copies for everyone. And I guess that at this point, I just felt that it's a great time for me to get involved. I'm at a position in my career where I have the time that I can devote to the committee. I feel the breadth of the skills that I've acquired over 25 plus years would be valuable.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
We're just going to whisper amongst ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
Can we take one? Okay. So would you like to pass out your letters?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you guys work together?
Thank you. So it looks like we have two great candidates for this one position. Dr.
yeah,
Sullivan, you want
go
to make a
ahead.
motion?
Yes, I move that we elect Leah for this position for the RVT on the MDC.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Any comments from the public?
Couldn't we add another RVT position?
I know, wouldn't that be great?
That's my comment. Can't we just change the word?
Should we call for the vote?
All right, ready? Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo,
Yes.
Judy Mancuso,
Yes.
Dr. Noland,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Alana Yanez.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Can I just make a comment also?
Yes.
Linda, I will tell you the same thing I told Leah last time when she
Yes.
didn't get it. Please apply again. You are
Yes.
very well qualified. We obviously didn't have a lot of candidates. Please apply again.
Yes.
And I was just going to say the same
Please,
thing, just
Ken.
keep in touch. Yes.
Thank you.
And there also will be at some time openings on the BMB as well, so, anyway, yes, please keep in touch. Okay, on to our public member. So we, Stuart Ekman, if you'd like to come forward, please.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, and thank you all for inviting me.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for applying. Do we do same questions? Same
do.
questions.
Oh, it's the same question.
Same questions as RBTs. Oh, sorry.
Good morning, Mr. Ekman. I'm the one that will ask the first question, it looks like. Thank you for being here. What are your interests in this position?
I've been involved with some human research and some veterinary research, and combining them in some comparative and translational work. And my involvement over the years on the for-profit and the nonprofit side of things has always been fulfilling, and I see this as an extension in terms of being able to give back.
Thank you.
Are you familiar with the functions of a licensing board committee and the laws governing veterinary medicine in California?
I am.
Could you expound on that a little bit?
I've read some of the laws over time, and to put some of it in perspective, when I chaired the Canine Health Foundation Grants Committee, I was one of those who had to do site visits to look at things at various vet schools that might not have been compliant with some of the original grant proposals. So I had to deal with some of those issues at various vet schools and got a perspective that gave me an opportunity to compare and contrast things that are going on here.
Okay, thank you.
Can you think of any positions you hold or activities that you're currently involved in that might present a conflict for you in serving as a member of the MDC and thus a representative of the Veterinary Medical Board?
No, I do serve one other public position. I was on a task force in Los Altos. I'm now one of the commissioners in Los Altos. And I've been in that position for a little while. I guess prior to that, I would have said my life's an open book, but I realize with the Brown Act, it's an open book, except when it involves a hub and spoke or daisy chain environment.
What is that? What's the task force?
I was on a task force that was charged with assessing the community's needs for a new community center and developing some protocols to help move something forward within the budget and within what we anticipated the city might need over the next 50 years. Right now, that position that task force has ended, and I'm a Los Altos Parks Commissioner at this time.
And is there anything else I'd like to share with the board?
The only other thing I can add is that if I were chosen, I would do what I've done with the other things that I've put my efforts into and just give it my all and try to do right by this board. Thank you.
Yes.
Are you aware of any potential conflict with your Parks Commissioner position with this board? Sometimes if there's an overlap in payment for public service, we cannot make a double payment. Basically, it's like double dipping. So if you receive an overall monthly salary or stipend for being a Parks Commissioner, you may not be able to, depending upon the terms of that, receive per diem through this participation.
I've never said this before, but I guess the good news there is I'm not getting paid.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
It's important to raise the issue in case that might affect your candidacy, whether or not you wanted to withdraw. So I just wanted to make a mention of that.
Yes.
Are we able to ask anything else that's on the paper here in front of us? Just again, a kind of a conflict. I was wondering about the executive chairman and trustee of the Molecular Sciences Institute, what that position is and what it entails. Is that okay? Could you answer that, please?
Yes, I was part of that organization in the past. I have not been for some time.
Okay.
So there is no.
What did they do?
It was an organization founded by a Nobel laureate in genomics, and the organization was pursuing some research in that area and also acting as an incubator for startups that wanted to use the.
Is it animal testing?
No.
It is not animal testing. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the public or comments? So, do we have a motion? Dr. Sullivan?
I move that we elect Stuart as the public member of the MDC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Kathy seconded. Call for the vote?
All right, Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alani Inez.
Yes.
Motion passes. Welcome, Stuart.
Thank you all
I
very
hope you
much.
like reading legal stuff. Yes, so let's have a break.
Please.
No. And Alana will be glad to hear that.
Yes.
Alana will be a few more minutes. So let's move on to agenda item number 7, and we have only 15 legislative bills that we need to talk about. So first one, AB 710. Now, so Ethan will give us the overview here.
Yeah, I'll provide a brief description of what the bill's trying to achieve and some other information. AB 710 is proposing suggested changes to the law that if CBD is rescheduled by the federal government, it would give the state the authority to authorize a healing arts licensee to possibly make a prescription for the rescheduling of that particular drug, CBD. The bill is currently in the second house, so it's passed the assembly, and staff is requesting the board consider a position on this particular bill.
I'm sorry, what did you say at the very end?
We're requesting the board consider a position.
Okay.
So this is the one that for some reason isn't,
Your microphone.
says it's urgent,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
As if the federal government's going to. So this one is labeled urgent for some reason. I don't see the federal government changing their Schedule 1 status anytime soon, but Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, when I read this, I guess I didn't understand it at all, because if the federal government reschedules this, then veterinarians with a DEA license would be able to prescribe it. So I guess there must be some conflict with state law if that occurs, but I would move to watch. I don't think we need to extend our issues any further than that.
Is there a second?
I'd second on the watch, yes.
Any other discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? Aye.
Good to see you again. Paul Hanford.
Hi, Paul.
CBD already has been placed as a Schedule I substance, whether it comes from cannabis or from hemp. This was a fairly recent development. The CBD medicines that are out there are somewhat unregulated, and so the dosage and the way that they're prescribed is done by a bud tender, and it's just, if a doctor gives a recommendation, it's like, here, you go figure it out. So there's been cases where people have been where manufacturers have made things that are less potent, and they need more volume to become for efficacy. This has other consequences in some people, or in some animals, this will create diarrhea, because it's the carrier, it's not the cannabis, not the CBD. This is probably the reason it was put on urgent is because it's already passed the House, and the Senate is about to vote on it, and so it's probably going to pass, and they'd just like to get your feedback.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Is it still morning? Yeah. Susan,
Yes.
Susan Tibbin, it's nice to see you again. I am a former instructor and illustrator for the California Academy of Sciences, as well as a curriculum writer for the San Francisco SPCA. But I'd like to share with you more a personal anecdote about all that we hear about CBD. It's really important to remember that the various compounds in the cannabis plant work synergistically. And although we read about the efficacy of CBD, in my case, with our kitty, who had a stroke a number of years ago, the medicine that eliminates her 15 to 20 seizures a day is actually a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD and THC and all the various components working synergistically. So I just hope that we all remember that this is not about, Scooby-Doo CBD treats. They're kind of fun, but maybe not so appropriate for many conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, right?
We do.
Motion and a
And we can do
second.
a vote.
Call for the vote?
I guess I'm still not even sure I'm still not sure what this bill does completely. It's very
That's why
big.
we're watching it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doesn't make sense.
That's why we have it as a watch.
Okay. Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alani Inez.
I'm going to abstain.
So AB 1753, low, controlled substances cures database. Ethan will, we already have a
So,
watch position,
yeah,
but
this-
Ethan will
this is
kind of
one-
review this.
Correct.
Oh, this is that.
We've already established the watch. If you'll recall from last meeting, this requires the limiting of number of prescription pad printers. The bill has been amended since we last heard it to not being prescriptive to necessarily 3, but reducing the number of prescription pad printers. There is an established fiscal impact on DOJ. Other than that, the position's been watch.
This has a high fiscal cost, or at least it originally did.
For Department of Justice.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
to the board necessarily.
So it's reduced it from 3, did it say how many?
What's that?
It's reduced the printers from 3 to?
So originally, it was asking to reduce the number of printers to just 3, but now it's saying basically reduce them, but not prescribing just 3.
Not
Reduce the
limiting it.
number of available
Okay.
prescription pad printers.
Okay.
Okay.
So we don't know
So
how
we
many.
just-
Is it, can I ask, the status of this is in, like, a PROPS? Or
So yes, it is,
there's a cost, right?
it is in appropriations, and it is scheduled to be heard on Friday.
So it's okay.
Suspense. yeah.
Suspense.
Correct, it's on suspense.
We're all on suspense.
Dr. Nunez?
I mean, my only concern, I know that the opioid crisis is definitely important. But it seems like there's only 3 printers that can print out these printed, the worst case scenario is that I'm in need of a prescription pad because I have a pet in pain that's gonna need some pain medicines, and I'm out of I'm out of prescription pads, and prescription pads are on back order, and I'm not gonna be able to get them, so the pet ends up in pain. That's the only concern I would have. It seems like 3 printers for the whole state of California, and veterinarians are usually the last ones that get those pads whenever anything goes on back orders. The priority is usually towards human
right.
medicine.
Is it 3 or is it just
I
restricted?
think they took 3 out.
Yeah.
They're not limiting it to 3 anymore. That was the amendment, so.
The-
And
Probably
it started,
everybody was against
currently
it.
there were like 20-some.
Yeah, there's doesn't have, the language is require the DOJ to reduce or limit the number of approved security printers.
Or limit. Can I ask Mark something? Do you already have a problem on this?
Well,
With the 20
I
that
mean,
are-
I know that whenever certain drugs go on back order,
Yeah.
I mean, usually it's the human medicine people that get the drugs first.
Right.
And if there's any left over, we get some. So, yeah, I've had to change anesthetic protocols
Yes.
because certain controlled drugs are not available.
Yes.
And now there's a potential that I won't be able to even script it out if there's not enough prescription pads available.
It's interesting.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, right now, we just redid our pads, and it took about 3 weeks to get them, just
Wow.
normally.
Yeah.
That's a long
That's good to
time.
know, yeah, it is.
It's going to be in pain.
Yes, right now veterinarians are having more trouble getting controlled drugs for pain meds.
I would think
It's-
that would
it's a
make
serious
sense. where-
problem.
Yeah, which is bad for consumers and mostly bad for the pets.
Yes.
Huh.
So we'll continue watch. Okay, on to AB 1776, Steinworth, the pilot project in San Bernardino.
Right, so this was also heard at our last meeting in February. It was amended to a pilot project in San Bernardino County. It authorizes an emergency medical technician to provide emergency transportation for a police dog injured in line of duty to a veterinary medical facility. The board's position was watch in February, and it has moved through the assembly. It's in the Senate right now.
And then the language also actually includes service dogs. The title says police dogs, but the language also includes service dogs. So we have a watch position on this. Just continue watching.
I've been supportive of it myself. I don't have any reason to watch. And then they downsized it for a pilot because of the fiscal impact to the state. I think we should support it. It's a great thing, and there's no reason to watch. I'll make a motion that we move from watch to support.
I'll second.
Okay, so is this bill at a point where it's not going to be changed?
Probably, I would say yes, because they got it out of
Because that's-
suspense. They
right.
had to downsize it, so I wouldn't imagine what could they do to it now. I mean,
It's
Dr.
in,
Sullivan?
In the past, we've tended to watch bills that aren't directly related to the Veterinary Medical Board. That was just a policy, and I think we'll end up getting way off on tangents if we start looking at all bills and taking a position on all bills. I would support a watch position.
Dr. Nunez?
And this bill is different from the one that was going to allow the EMTs to perform
Yes.
first aid.
Yes, that's another bill.
Right, there's another bill.
This is just transportation.
Just
It's transportation.
to a veterinary facility, yeah.
Okay, so Judy moved, and did we have a second?
Loretta.
Yes. Kathy,
I
yes.
just wanted to reply to Mark. I think it was Mark, I think. Anyway, I would normally, or no, I think it was Dr. Sullivan. I normally agree with you on this, but because this is a pilot project, I think it might be a very useful learning thing for everyone, and so that's why, if it wasn't a pilot project and it was going in across the state, I would be on a watch position as well, but I feel comfortable at the pilot project stage.
Okay, yes, Dr. Nolan?
Do we have any idea what the EMTs, what position they have on this, or the medical board, or anybody else involved in human medicine that's involved with this?
My understanding is they're for it.
They're
Is that
support-
your understanding, Dr. Sullivan?
Well, at our last meeting, they were here, and I think the group that was here was from San Bernardino, and they were supporting that bill.
They were the EMTs that were, okay.
they presented.
Yeah, that was originally their bill.
Yeah, they're the sponsors.
So
Well, we got a motion and a
We have a motion and a
second.
second. Any other discussion? Any comments from the public? Good. Call for the vote.
All right. Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
No,
Kathy Bowler,
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo,
Yes.
Judy Mancuso,
Yes.
Dr. Noland,
No.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Alani Inez.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-2.
Motion passes. AB 2138, their licensing boards, and the denial of application.
So.
We do
okay.
need to vote on this one. This is the first time we're being presented with this bill. We do need to vote, and as I understand it, there is a high fiscal cost for this one.
We have tagged a fiscal cost to about $95,000 annually. We are requesting the board consider a position. This particular bill is proposing some significant changes to how we conduct our enforcement activities. And there's a lot to unpack on this bill, but I'll just hit the highlights. Some of the things that we're concerned about as staff are limiting denial of applications based on criminal convictions over 5 years old. It would not require an applicant to disclose any criminal documentation upon application to the board. It would require the boards to develop written criteria of substantially related crimes that would adversely affect qualifications for licensure and post those requirements on its website. It would potentially limit probationary terms to no more than 2 years.
Yeah.
And those are the biggest effects on this particular bill. So again, we're asking the board to consider a position.
Dr. Sullivan,
I move to oppose.
Second.
any other discussion? Dr. Nunez?
Did this bill come out of the Little Hoover Committee? The committee that was talking about reducing regulatory constraints for,
Is anybody
So,
aware of
yeah,
where this?
the analysis talks about, this tone of reducing barriers to entry in licensure. Yeah, certainly I was a Little Hoover Commission report, and the analysis states that this bill seeks to achieve that.
that's why I would assume it came from.
Yeah.
I think the intentions are good, but for us, with dealing with lives, it's not okay.
No.
Drugs, little bitty lives of people that can't speak.
Any other comments?
No way.
Any comments from the public? Call for the vote.
Absolutely. Dr. Waterhouse.
Okay, which way is the vote? Is it to-
Oppose.
To oppose,
Or
yes,
oppose.
I vote to oppose.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Nolan.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Too bad there's not a strongly opposed, but yes.
Okay. Alana Yanes.
Yes.
Pass.
AB 2215. So this is the cannabis bill that we discussed last time, and then we had a neither support nor oppose letter to watch and actively work with Assemblymember Culver's office, which we did, and I was present for the vote on this bill, and my position was, our position then was to continue working with the author. And in the meantime, we do have a support position because they had changed some language, and I met with Cara's office, and forwarded the main information that we had was that we needed more money for research, that we had a concern for quality control, that the products weren't necessarily as advertised, and that we really needed, there isn't solid information out there about indications, dosing, and all that we really needed research. But anyway, we officially now have a support position. And so, any questions on that? So that was the executive committee that had a support position.
Okay. And I had a question on this. I assume it's still in there because it's on the recent one Ethan just handed us. It's still, the bill currently would still require the boards to develop guidelines for these by July 1, 2019, so basically a year from now? I mean, a little more than.
We've actually asked if that be extended
Yeah.
another 6 months. We're hoping to see that get amended into.
And would this guarantee then, if this bill passed, is there some funding mechanism, or would we put a PCP in or something? Because obviously, I don't even understand how we would actually do the guidelines that quick without some
That has to be an
expenditures.
amendment, yeah.
So
Yes,
that's
Dr.
my
Sullivan.
question.
Yeah, we had said there's no fiscal impact to this one. We think we can absorb the cost through the
Oh.
guidelines. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Dr. Sullivan?
I would see that you would immediately refer this to the MDC and have them do the initial work. And we have a really good model. The medical guidelines are already there.
Okay.
And I think they're excellent, and it's a good template to start with.
Okay, I was not aware of that.
Wow. What amendments did they take for you, Cheryl?
They, they continued with discussion instead of recommendation. But I think they'd already changed that, but we just presented our information about, so I don't know if they really changed anything after that.
We did add
After
the
we met
word
with them.
solely
Oh, yes, we did add.
to make sure
Yes.
that we're very clearly, narrowly focused on
And that was
the
one thing I.
ability to lack discipline.
Right,
Yeah.
and so that was one thing I failed to mention was our concern with the restriction on discipline for a veterinarian discussing marijuana. They added solely. Tara got involved and suggested a little bit different language in there, but they nixed that and went back to just adding solely, to solely discuss marijuana.
And what about everybody else that's discussing it at pet stores and grooming facilities and boarding facilities?
They
Are they going
recognize-
to say that those people shall not discuss?
We discussed that, yes, we discussed that. They recognize that's a problem, but it didn't end up in the bill.
Well, I don't feel comfortable supporting it unless it just says that it's in the hands of the vets. I
Oh, I think it'd be a
it's,
separate bill. Maybe it needs to be a separate, Dr. Sullivan.
I guess I need to read this bill
The
word for
problem
word.
we ended up with, or the way it ended up being, is that the wording was to discuss, and if we didn't support the bill, that may not have even gone through. Right at the end, the word out there in the legislature was that the Veterinary Medical Board opposed this bill. That's what got out there. So that's why we quickly wrote a letter of support, because recommend was the word that we were having trouble with at the board, but I don't think anybody was concerned about the ability to discuss, and we needed to do that. So that's why we put a support letter together and got it sent out, and it's moving.
Dr. Nunez.
The issues that Judy's talking about would probably fall under unlicensed activity. So we probably would have to focus on having the ability to prescribe it first before we talk about unlicensed activity. Not saying that's what we're voting on right now, but that's kind of.
I don't know if I
what
agree with that
think-
part of it. I think we can go there anyway before then, but
That's, yeah.
Judy.
Well, I read in the paper the other day, we got $69 million in from the cannabis industry, and it's helping our general fund and our budget. But with that kind of influx of cash, there should be a funding mechanism. I mean,
So
there's nothing more than cannabis affects than people and animals, right? That's it. And the human stuff is kind of taking care of its stuff, but the animals, there's not even scratching the surface for them.
So
And
I talked to them
everybody and their
about-
brother is doing this now.
Yes. And so I talked to them about needing research and informed them that in the human field, that a percent of the licensing fee to the Cannabis Bureau is going to research at UC San Diego.
Has to
And
be
that
in
we
here.
needed a percent of that also for research, but.
Good.
So
I mean,
anyway,
yeah, we
were
can't
making
let up.
contacts.
We gotta make
You
sure
work
that's
on
in
that,
here.
Judy.
Okay.
It's something for you to
Well,
work on.
there used to be a legislative subcommittee on the vet board, and maybe we should discuss putting that back, because I would be happy to work on this, and if the president appoints me to, I'll do it. But we did have that at one time. This is when Tom was president, a long time ago, probably before you were on the board, I don't know.
So, Tara.
I just want to make a note that the bill needs an amendment to fix some language, just to make sure that the Practice Act is clean. I'm looking at page 3 of the bill, line 11. Right now, it says veterinarian-client relationship, and it should say veterinarian-client-patient relationship. That's all.
Which-
It's just a
Yes.
note, but we want to keep the Practice Act clean, so I'm just saying if
And I
the
had s-
board is amended.
And I had sent a note to them saying that, but that didn't get put in either.
We should address it when it gets to the Senate, if it gets to the Senate.
It's headed there.
Yeah.
It's in the third reading.
And so, how would the mechanism be for that?
Well, I'll reach out to
You send a-
I'll reach out to the staff,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
I have a question, and I'm reading this from the handout that we just got, so I'm not sure where it is in the actual older version. But it states in the third paragraph down on the first page, the bill would authorize an adult 21 years of age and over to use for medicinal purposes cannabis and cannabis products on an animal owned by that adult. I have a problem with that because we don't have any good information to give these adults using this, and
that's why we backed off from recommend to
yeah,
support or to discuss.
that's my
because-
problem with this bill, is we're getting the cart before the horse.
Absolutely, yeah.
Frankly,
But we need
though,
to be
isn't,
able, we're caught in the catch-22 because we need to be able to discuss it. Right now, veterinarians can't do anything. We need to be able to discuss it.
Yeah, unfortunately, parts of the bill I think are very necessary, and I would be happy to support, and other parts I'm struggling with.
Yes, I feel your pain.
unfortunately, that's what can happen now. Anyone can give cannabis to their, a non-vet, but I mean, an owner, a pet guardian, and they're doing it all the time. So I don't know that this is not it's not really allowing it, it's basically, that's what's happening right now, is my understanding. I'm saying that may be misguided, but that's what people are doing already.
I guess I feel like this bill supports that, and not just allows it, it supports it, and I'm not comfortable with it.
Find the language.
We need
I
to
think
get
you
more
might be
involved in
looking
this
for
one.
page 9.
Of the bill?
Yeah, lines 27 through.
But
Or
it still will
34.
come back, if this passes, then it will come back to us to write guidelines, and we can decide upon our guidelines.
Yeah, but there could be stuff in statute then that we can't get around. So you got to be okay with what's going in statute, you know? I
Yes.
mean, and that's the part that we got to be sure of. So I think we need to dive deep into this one. I really do. Because it could be our shot, right, to get what we want from it. If it's moving, if it gets held in, is it on suspense as well, Ethan?
No, it's on its way to the second house.
So it'll have
third
its
reading.
first policy hearing over on the Assembly,
That's
on the Senate?
That's the anticipation,
Okay,
yes.
so that's where we would ask for any amendments.
Valerie?
So just to clarify, it's on the assembly floor right now.
Right.
It needs a 2/3 vote to pass. It's not a slam dunk. We've been working very hard to get it passed.
You are.
We are working hard to get it through the assembly floor. We have a support position on it. And my understanding of what you're talking about right here in this section too is right now the regulatory body, the cannabis regulatory body in the state has no authority over cannabis and animals, none. And this is an attempt by Assemblymember Calra to give them authority over the use of cannabis in animals. Whatever that turns out to be will be discussed. But right now, it's only authority for them to regulate humans, cannabis use on humans, not on animals. So without this, it's going to be free reign out there with no guidance. So in addition to the importance that veterinarians can discuss cannabis with their clients, we think this is an important bill, and we are in full support.
So we can't just put in the Practice Act somewhere and make our own change that you guys can discuss with? Do we have to go through the legislative process, or is it something now that it's legal in the state of California that we could just change our Practice Act to include?
This is making a change to the Practice Act.
It is, but I mean, could the board change it through regulations? We don't need this bill. We could have done it on our own. Isn't that correct?
No, I don't believe that is correct because of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act, which makes cannabis a Schedule I drug. So, and then there's no ability for a veterinarian to do anything with that. That's why the discussion issue is here. and physicians can recommend it, but not do anything further. They can't prescribe it. Veterinarians cannot, they don't have a recommendation authority. So because all of these prohibitions are already part of the statutes, I don't believe that the board would be able to regulate cannabis without a statutory authority.
You know, I wonder what they did in Colorado, because it's been legal there for a while, what their vet board did. Be interesting.
Kathy?
I actually have a question, and back to Jamie's point. And in section 4, yeah, I'm confused as why they're adding it in, but I have a question. What is the definition of the licensee on line 34, Tara? I was kind of flipping around. Let's see, may be sold to an adult as described in subdivision A by a licensee who has been issued a retailer license. That's a retailer, marijuana
Correct.
retailer, has nothing to do with.
Right, because that's the cannabis control.
That's what they control.
Sections under the Business and Professions Code. They're linking it up. So not only would they be changing the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act, but they're also changing the cannabis control provisions.
So basically, not codifying that any adult 21 and over can buy cannabis from a licensee for their pet at their own discretion.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's which they can do now.
Which they, well, which they do now, right? But this would actually call it out, say they can do, I mean, now they do it just because it's for sale in places, right?
I think probably one of the important pieces of this, which might go to why CBMA is supporting it, is on page 6, it adds edible cannabis product to include animal consumption of a cannabis product, which is, that's the important oversight for the Bureau of Cannabis Control, is that they can now enforce these animal products and so that they're safer. What that looks like, I don't know, because we don't have research.
Safer include, in things like not including chocolate, not including things that are more toxic to animals than they
Maybe
are to
being
humans.
what, I got a box of some cannabis cookies as a freebie at a fundraiser in my gift bag. Anne-Marie had it tested, and nothing in the cookie was on the ingredients on the box. So I would want safer to mean the ingredients match what's printed on the box is what's really in the cookie.
Quality
That would be
control
safer.
is a big issue, yes.
What is it?
Quality control is a big issue.
Yeah.
Yes, but you know, there are many issues within this, but the bill, as Val and Tara has mentioned, the bill overall gives us a structure to start regulating this. And I think the big thing will be the guidelines that will be written. I mean, that's really where the substance will come in. But right now it's the wild, wild west.
Right.
There are no rules.
Right, I get it.
Yeah, yes. Yes, Paul.
Oh, my goodness.
We could be silly.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi, once again, I'm Paul Hansberry. First of all, Judy, to answer your question, that you couldn't regulate it because what this bill does, one of the things that it does is it gives the authority to produce products for animals. Right now, the statute just says that it's for humans. So that it would be out of your purview, so it has to be done in statute. One of the things that we strongly oppose was one of the modifications that was made after it passed in the the Business and Professions Committee, was it took out the language that veterinary cannabis products must be sold in a medical retail outlet. They changed it so that it can be in adult use. There's no such thing as adult use for animals. I'm sorry. We've done a lot of research. There's a lot more that needs to be done. Everyone wants to see the research. There's guidelines that need to happen. AB 2215 is considered a baby step, a good starting point. We disagree. What you have in front of you is, in some cases, a bit more liberal. In some cases, is a bit more restrictive. But you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Right. Once you have this liberal, and I think you put it very eloquently, that what this bill is doing is allowing people to do what they're doing now. There's no provisions for safety for the animals. There's no provision for furthering the profession of veterinary. There's nothing that would further the research that's so desperately needed. If a veteran, and it doesn't, it says that that a veterinarian can discuss it. If a veterinarian discusses it, how does he know what he's talking about? A continuing education course would be really important, I would think, so that he's sure that he knows that they're all speaking the same, sending the same message. But more importantly, it gives the patient, the client, the ability to have a trusted healthcare professional give a recommendation based on his knowledge, rather than going to a bud tender and saying, oh yeah, I hear this does this. That's what the salesman told me. We have no regulation on the dosage or what it is. All it does is open up the marketplace. What I gave you here was what we put together as recommendations, what we'd like to see. There's one piece in here that talks about veterinary retail. This is not a stipulation. That is that particular piece is a placeholder, just in case things do change on a federal level, that it would allow for better access. It would allow the veterinarian to get a state license. It authorizes the Bureau of Cannabis Control to issue a new license for veterinarians to dispense, so that they wouldn't have to go to another retail outlet, and it would just be for veterinary products. But the other things that are in here, the first packet here is the recommendations that we would like to see. Some of them, again, are a little pie in the sky, but the bare bones are that we need safety for the animals first. We need the same protections for veterinarians that medical doctors enjoy, and they're to be able to recommend. There needs to be continuing education in order to qualify to do that, so that they know what they're talking about, and to encourage them to share their information with other healthcare providers. What better way to get a body of evidence to conduct these clinical trials than the records of the healthcare professional, the veterinarians? So the first page is the intention, what we would like to do. We had a member of the Assembly, through their legislative aid, put it through Legislative Council. That's the second. So this is statute and everything, this language can be put into this bill right now, and it would do an awful lot of the work that this bill that AB 2215 is requiring you to do. So I'm letting you have a look at this so that you can pick and choose over it. If the bill passes as it is, maybe some of this will help you, but if it's already in statute, it will help to guide you with your regulations, with what you were tasked to do. But there may be some things that the statute, as Judy pointed out, that you wouldn't be able to do because the statute, this modifies the quality control, that's already in Malcursa, okay? This modifies that for animals. So please have a look at that, and I hope it helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Excuse me, I assume, but I want to ask, have you been working with the Assemblymember Culver's office to talk through this? Because that's a role more for you than in terms of.
I understand, yes. We've reached out a few times.
Okay.
And they've said that they feel that this is a good first step, and we couldn't disagree more.
I
I think
see.
that as you so eloquently put, all it's doing is giving them permission to do what they're doing already, and it doesn't help anybody but the marketplace.
Okay. I mean, I know it's very limited what we can do, and this is a very complicated issue. I have one question that, actually, it probably would be better asked of the author, but if a person buys a produced medication or edible that they now can do from a licensed retailer that in fact kills their animal, let's say. Do they go to the Cannabis Board, or is the retailer on the hook, or?
Yeah.
I suppose that would be the same thing for a human, I mean, if they bought something.
What is it?
That's for
Is it
consumer
unlicensed
protection.
activity?
No, but I don't think it affects us, but I mean, just what is that consumer's recourse?
Probably civil litigation, a tort action against the retailer for selling a product that killed their animal. But the point is there a state agency that's overseeing these products?
Right.
I am unfamiliar with MCRSA, all of the cannabis control sections. So I don't exactly know how this really improves the law, other than this provision that specifically authorizes adults to obtain cannabis products for use on their animals is, kind of lends support to what Paul is saying, that this bill is, it supports the industry and may or may not actually provide better protections for animals. But yeah, it is a tough bill. It's very difficult to review statutory amendments on the fly because it involves two state agencies, not just this board, but also the Bureau for Cannabis Control. So,
And is it possible for us to go straight to the Cannabis Bureau and express our concerns that we've had today?
I'm sure your EOs could discuss the concerns with the bill and share those concerns with the members at the next meeting. When's
Well,
the
that's
next
too
meeting?
late.
In August?
Yeah, next meeting's too late.
Right, so I think it's August 31st or 30th is the last day of session, so that's your next meeting, and that would be too late.
Yeah. Dr. Nunez?
So this bill, 2215, is going to authorize the production of cannabis products to be used in animals. It also says that the Veterinary Medical Board is going to establish guidelines on how these products should be used, and I'm okay with all that. But the question Kathy raised about who's going to regulate these products, and when I'm using a drug,
Yes.
I know that it's the Board of Pharmacy
Yes.
that is controlling the purity and the quality of the product. So should the Board of Pharmacy get involved in, or is this going to be falling under the Board of
Cannabis,
what's it
yes.
called? The Board of
Cannabis
Cannabis?
Bureau.
Control,
Cannabis
yeah.
Control? Which-
Bureau of Cannabis Control.
Which board does that go under?
Well, I'm just correcting you. It's the FDA that is regulating the.
Yeah, since animals aren't using this for recreational purposes, and we're talking this is a medication, then you think it would be, but
Well,
that's
who
why I
already
suggested
regulates
going
it
to
for
the Cannabis
medication?
Bureau and.
As
saying this
opposed
is
to the Board of
medication.
Pharmacy?
That, Paul, do you have?
Crazy.
I can answer that.
And Dr. Miller.
The statute, excuse me, Paul Hansberg, the statute has very strict testing procedures. In fact, the testing used to be $50 to test for, and now it's over $1,000.
And which statute are you talking about?
The cannabis for cannabis control, the MCRSA, all right?
Okay.
Within that, there's a whole section devoted just to testing for purity, for labeling, for giving cannabinoid ratios and potencies. All that's in the labeling, and it's all dialed in perfectly as it stands right now. Now, as far as the dosage, that's why you need to have the continuing education and the
Research.
recommendations.
Let's-
So then is it labeled with something that it falls within these
Yes.
guidelines? And what is that label?
The labeling is fairly extensive, but to put it simply, the cannabinoid content, especially THC and CBD and CBN, if you're touting that, and all the terpenes, if you're saying you're using those for medicinal purposes as well, those ratios have to be plainly put onto the label. They're tested for microbial, for pesticides, for molds, mildews, and it's a very extensive.
So you pay $1,000, you get your product tested.
Per batch.
Per batch. So you get the batch tested, and then what tells the consumer that, where's that good seal, housekeeping seal on the end product that I'm buying, that I know it went through this stringent testing? How do I know?
That is on the label as part of the rules. It can't even go to the retail outlet.
Does it say state of California? Is it a stamp? Is it a seal?
There's a seal, there's a triangle with a cannabis leaf saying
Okay.
that's that.
Okay.
But it's in the statute that it has. been
Okay,
tested
so
for
that's
purity.
good. At least that exists, so
And-
that's good.
And even though there's legislation pending, that if you have a batch tested and you have your labels printed up, and doesn't
It
match the
fails.
test results, then the distributor may, if this bill passes, and it probably will, adjust the labeling so that it does correspond with the test results for the batch.
Who's issuing that seal?
State of California,
That's the Cannabis Bureau then?
yes.
And is that, again, that's for human consumption?
Yes, but this is what you have in front of you.
Right.
Is including that into Malcursa, so that all of the safeguards that have been put into place and all the restrictions that have been put into place for humans would be the same. But because the veterinary use is something else altogether, it's somewhat different. This allows that and allows, gives them the same protections and also allows it for animal use. But as we all know, the dosage is really critical, and that information is important.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Briefly.
Susan Tibbin. The history of 2215 may help to make the right decisions. The history of the bill is that an online veterinary cannabis medicine maker hired a lobbyist to push this bill through. The bill promotes sales of cannabis both in retail outlets and, very importantly, online. The bill is woefully inadequate in terms of the safety of animals, the enhancement of the profession, research, and the fiscal realities that the VMB will incur. I will be brief, and going to that, the heavy lifting, the consultants, the time, the attention on the part of the VMB is considerable as 2215 stands. And I respectfully urge the board to look closely at the Ledge Council aspect of our document. It would protect animals. It would mandate continuing education for those veterinarians who wish to incorporate cannabis-based therapy in their practice. And importantly, it alleviates the onerous costs for the VMB. In closing, Gary Richter was unable to join us today. He is a veterinarian. You may be familiar with him. He says, unless cannabis is only available with a veterinary recommendation, the profession is implicitly endorsing its use without veterinary guidance. If the DMV views cannabis as such a strong drug, then it has to be administered under medical supervision. And I would second Paul's comment. Our experience working with dispensaries over the past number of years is that, however well-intentioned, staff in recreational dispensaries is absolutely untrained and unable to guide a caregiver with respect to their animals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, where do we go from here?
Well,
Dr. Nolan?
I just would ask for some clarification on page 6 of this handout. It mentions that this bill would prohibit a licensed veterinarian from dispensing or administering cannabis or cannabis products to an animal patient, and it would expand the scope of that crime, et cetera. Why is that in here again?
I think it's also true in human medicine.
But why is it in here now? What was the purpose of that? What was the intent of that? Because what it is doing, it is expanding the scope of MCRSA and people licensed with AUMA and all adults over the age of 21. It's encouraging it's allowing them to use this in their pets with very little guidance, but it's supporting.
Coming down on the vet.
Sullivan?
Yeah, it's restricting the veterinarian from dispensing it because we can't even get the discussion passed. We're having trouble getting the discussion passed, so if you put in dispensing, would be even a lot more difficult.
But we already are not allowed to dispense it. So why are we adding that to here? What's the purpose?
Just clarifying.
What?
That's a great point.
And it's also true in
silent.
human medicine, so.
It seems to me if this is a chemical that has the capacity and probably propensity to harm, if not kill, a lot of different animals, why would it not be treated as a drug? Why would it, why else are we using it in pets? Pets are like children.
Yes.
They're not adults.
agree.
They don't use recreational drugs. So why are we kind of assuming they're going to be the same? The only purpose I can see for using cannabis in an animal is for medicinal purposes, which ought to be treating it as a drug then, not, so I would love to hear your comments, Val,
Val.
because I'm struggling with this one quite a bit.
So you can go into a pet store on Folsom Boulevard right now, and you can pick up CBD treats and brochures. I'm reading from the brochure, possible uses for full-spectrum pet relief CBD hemp oil. Can be used for pain management, anxiety, arthritis, epilepsy, cancer symptoms, inflammation, GI tract issues, neuroprotectant. You can go buy that right now. There is no oversight, period, and you can't discuss it as a veterinarian.
And is there any guarantee that there is any cannabis whatsoever in that product?
None.
None.
That's what I'm saying, is you may not love every part of this bill, but at least it's going to give oversight of these products where they can be regulated by the state of California. It also will allow veterinarians to discuss, not recommend. You will not get recommend in this bill. We have been around and around, and there are reasons that it will not happen. So it's a moot point. If you want to be able to discuss it with your clients, then this bill needs to pass. Otherwise, you will be right where we are today, and that's going over to Folsom Boulevard and picking it up and seeing all these great things it can do for your pet with no regulation.
So let me ask you this, Val, before you go. Why would we not, as a veterinary medical board, just take this bull by the horns and change our practice act to allow veterinarians to discuss it? I mean, why not take that route?
Because so what Tara,
You can't.
Tara was discussing.
It's a statutory authority. Physicians couldn't do it until the bill was passed to allow them to recommend it, and you're not allowed to do it. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't be putting statute in. There would be some movement to do that. It has to be statutory authority.
And we don't have the ability to decide as a board what actions we will pursue on what issues due to our limited budget?
Well, we could have done the bill ourselves. I mean, we could have presented.
Well,
We could have brought a bill forward ourselves, right? I mean, if we can't do it in regs, we could have just drafted something and found an author and got it done. And we could still make amendments to this if there's something, that can pass and not jeopardize it from getting to the finish line.
so you probably have talked to them the most recently. Are they receptive to amendments?
I don't believe that we have suggested any amendments to Assemblymember Calra. As far as I know, this is it. And it's, you know, if it moves off the assembly floor and goes to the Senate side, I think it would be difficult to get any amendments at that point.
That's true.
Kathy?
One of the things, I mean, I agree, this is
We're having trouble getting
not
two-thirds vote.
thrilled with this either, but it does, I guess there are a couple of positive things that it does in terms of protection for consumers and primarily animals, is it brings that whole supply chain, which is out there now, into having to comply, especially with the other labeling and other things that cannabis products must comply with under our Cannabis Bureau. And it also allows then a veterinarian can say, you know, there is no proof about this working, by the way, or there's no research. You can have the discussion with your client if your client asks you about it, which I guess you cannot even say anything right now. So I'm kind of, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's probably moving and maybe our guidelines can further tighten it. I don't know.
It's a step forward, and, I mean, the cannabis industry, it's all over the place. I mean, it's new, it's a lot is going on right now. This will probably not be the only statute ever written about veterinary medicine and cannabis. There will be others to follow, but that is as research goes on and as we see how this plays out, we see how discussion works, and I can only tell you that we've looked at this in many different ways and still believe it is best, certainly for consumers, for veterinarians, clients, and their patients, most importantly, to be able to especially be able to discuss it. This is a huge problem in veterinary medicine. Veterinarians are being asked every day about toxicity issues and people who are going to these places and getting treats and oils, and nothing can be even discussed. So that is our position on it, if that helps.
I was going to say, and just from a consumer perspective, I'd sure rather be able to talk to my vet about it than listen to the advertisement or promotional stuff of some online thing that's really mostly focused on humans. So hopefully this is additional protection. I just think it's not completely cooked, but I don't think we can make any amendments at this point to this.
Of course we
Is my
can.
personal opinion.
I think we can. If they're good enough, we could pitch them. I mean, if it helps strengthen it. Sorry, Mark.
So the executive committee has supported this. Do we need to call for a vote to support your support?
I think we probably should, yes.
No, I think the point of order would be, we have a support position. If somebody wants a different position, they have to make a motion.
Yes.
So if we do nothing, then we're still supporting it?
Yeah. That's is that?
Let's do
Yes,
nothing.
yes, that's an amendment procedure.
No,
Yes.
they support it.
Then
They did.
my opinion is that we do nothing.
Is everybody okay with that?
I do think
Okay.
this discussion was very, very important and
Yes.
useful, though. Thank you. Thank you.
And the guidelines discussions will be very interesting.
Right. I do have one other question, just for probably Ethan, is do we have any active cases for disciplining, denying, revoking, or suspending a license due to discussing the use of cannabis? Have we pursued any of that?
I'm not aware of that.
Candace out there? No. Okay, so we're done with AB 2215, and how about if we break for lunch? Yes. Reconvene this meeting of the Veterinary Medical Board and go on to AB 2300, Mainshine.
Okay, so we had heard this bill in February as more of a concept. It hadn't been put into a bill yet. It proposes to give pro bono CE credit for spay and neutering, CE credit for pro bono spay and neutering. The bill did amend slightly that the maximum allowable credit is 4 hours. And the bill is currently in the Senate. It's gone past the Assembly.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. What was the amendment about the CE?
It gives a little bit less CE credit. It was from 6 to 4 hours. But the idea is still the same, do pro bono spay neuter, and you'll get some CE credits, which, it does stand to note that we do give certain CE credit for subject matter experts in our exam workshops and also for helping us out with our occupational analysis surveys. So it's not unprecedented, but there it is.
So it kind of fits in there for 4 to 6 hours, or what was it? No, just 4 hours?
4 hours, yeah.
4 hours.
Doesn't fit in.
No, because the other things are still clinical, they're still medicine related, they're still, and they're still they can still learn from that, and they're not learning anything from this.
Yeah, I think it wasn't part of our issue about CE was so important on so many
Yes.
changing issues dynamically anyway.
Yes.
That to allow, it's great to do it and volunteer, but to allow it to take the place of CE would be
Yes.
not the best approach.
Yeah, I mean, the 18 hours that are required now a year, 36 every 2 years, I mean, that's pretty minimal. Most veterinarians get more than that. But
Right.
it's and my concern is that, like, the people who really need CE, they're going to
Don't
get the
take 'em
middle
away
milk,
from
and they're
it.
the ones that are likely to do this.
Right.
And they really need the CE.
That's not good.
Why,
Dr. Nunez?
what was the discussion for watching it?
Well,
as
because it was still
opposed
just a concept at that time. We didn't really have, there wasn't
Can I
a
have a
bill.
motion to oppose?
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion from the board?
Jamie?
Any comments from the public?
I don't.
How do you feel?
I feel the same way that I think that Dr. Waterhouse just said. I feel like it's not going to be utilized by the correct people, and it's really not a situation where they're going to be learning what they need to learn to protect the consumer in the future. It's not relevant to continuing education. It's a great idea. It's something that we
well-intentioned.
need, but it's not relevant to consumer protection.
I'm a huge proponent of spay and neuter,
Yeah,
but,
This is the wrong way.
yeah, I see the value of the CE so much, like you guys are saying with our disciplinary cases and whatnot, so I don't want to take away the CE from them.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and no further comments. We'll call for the vote.
Public comment?
Oh, I did.
Okay, Dr. Waterhouse,
Okay, so we're voting to oppose, so I agree, yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler,
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo,
Yes.
Judy Mancuso,
I'm going to wait for everybody else.
Dr. Noland,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Alana Yanez,
Yes.
Dr.
Jennifer, Dr. Laredo.
Judy. How about that?
Did you vote already? You voted yes? Okay, I'm gonna go yes. I mean, it pains me because we need every spay and neuter we can possibly get, but I get this, I really do. So, okay, yes.
So how do we communicate that to
Shut
the
up, I had to
legislature?
qualify it.
I'd be happy to draft a letter noting
Okay.
that we've opposed to this meeting the bill.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you could do that.
Mhm.
Okay, AB 2362, Rubio, safe transportation of dogs and cats.
To recuse myself, we are, my nonprofit's the sponsor of the bill.
All right, so,
Happy to answer questions, and I can go sit out there if you want me to.
so this bill has also moved to the Senate. It does seek to establish health safety standards for traveling housing facilities for dogs and cats, providing heating, cooling, ventilation, and lighting.
Dr. Sullivan?
I move to watch since this is a bill that doesn't directly affect the Veterinary Medical Board.
Is there a second? Dr. Nunez?
I'll second that, but is this about ambulances? What is this about?
Yeah,
No, it's about, the genesis of it is from shelter trucks and transporting strays and whatnot in the heat and them dying, when they get to shelter, opening the thing and they're dead from the heat,
Okay.
so. We need to put ambulances on the agenda.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Kathy?
Just in general, I guess Judy, could this, I haven't read the bill text, but could this get applied to individuals or?
Well, so
Because
I
I'm
did the
thinking-
individuals.
Thing.
So back in 2006, the first law I ever worked on was with Senator Liz Figueroa, and that's 597.7, animals in unattended vehicles.
Right.
And that gave animal control and SPCA officers the ability to get in and rescue an animal. But this is something, the next step that, hey, you got to have the proper vehicle in a shelter, SPCA, blah, 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 blah. So it's different.
But it
does it say-
stipulates it's only for shelters and SPCA.
Yes, and rescues, and we have some language that we're working on that tightens up exactly who it is, because rescues, can mean anything. So there is going to be another version of this that you'll see the next time, and you'll probably like it even better because it better defines who it applies to.
And I'd just like to say that as a Commissioner for LA Animal Services, this is something that we absolutely struggled with. The blame was often thrown onto General Services, that we needed new trucks. There was a backlog in ordering these trucks, so I think it's a good thing that this bill could get pushed through, because, a lot of animals die every summer in LA because of this. They just forget them in the truck, and it's really unfortunate.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Is there a second? Who was second?
Dr. Nunez did. Any
Nunez.
comments, any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay,
All right.
call for the vote.
Okay. Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
This is to watch? Are we on watch?
Yes. Decisions to watch. Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Recuse.
Yeah, recused. Gotcha. Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alana Yanez.
Yes.
Motion passes. AB 2409, that bill has died, so we will move on to AB 24.
Wait.
AB,
What's 2409? What was that
It
one?
was making a determination on whether an applicant may be denied their application for licensure and requiring the board to make that determination before application.
Oh, okay, thank you.
okay, so AB 2483, roll poll, indemnification of public officers and employees antitrust awards. And as I understand it, this one is in the second house.
Yes.
And Tara, do you want to explain this one a little bit more?
This bill effectively addresses civil suits against board members. And when I say civil suit, it's specifically with respect to antitrust claims. And when there is a settlement or an award of damages, this bill would say that that would be a treble damage amount, but the board itself would cover any liability of the members. And this is addressing concern raised in an Attorney General opinion following the North Carolina antitrust case. So it's just kind of probably something to watch. I don't think a position is necessary.
Okay.
Has DCA taken a position on this?
I am unaware of a position by DCA.
Dr. Sullivan?
Well, not to disagree with Tara, but I would like to be protected by law, and I want to support this bill because it affects every one of us.
But not veterinary medicine.
Yeah. It affects the board. It affects the board.
Affects you.
I know, I was trying to make a joke, because he said last time on, the last one, well, it doesn't affect veterinary medicine, but, yeah. Shut up, I know, it's a bad joke, I know.
Is there a second?
Okay, so was that a motion?
Yes.
That was a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion from the board?
So remind me, we're voting to.
Any
Support.
comment from the
protection.
public? Call for the vote.
Okay, motion to support.
To support or what? Oh, we're.
Support.
Okay.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alani Inez.
Yes.
Motion passes. AB 2589, Bigelow. So this is regarding what we call HCG. It's a controlled substance that is used in veterinary medicine. It's also used, I assume it's used in somewhat in human medicine, but it's abused by certain, like bodybuilders and things like that. So do you want to, you want to discuss it more?
No, I mean, I don't have much to add. It is allowing a veterinarian certain authorities to possess, purchase, transfer, administer.
It's used in large animal medicine.
Yeah,
Used to use it in ferrets too, but that was a long time ago in a different state.
and exempting them.
Because they're illegal here.
It is a very common drug in equine reproduction. We use it quite often, and also in cattle when we're doing ICSI or some sort of embryo transfer work. So it's pretty commonly used. We use it daily during the breeding season.
Yeah. Okay, so is there a motion?
I'll second it then.
Well, what does the bill do exactly?
Just exempt it from being a control.
It specifically removes from Schedule 3 requirements
Thank you.
this drug, HCG, when sold or possessed by a veterinarian for veterinary purposes.
I see.
Just thinking
Okay.
about a schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Using
you.
some paperwork for the veterinarian.
Got it.
Okay, so Dr. Nunez motioned and Dr. Nolan seconded. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public
That was a support, right?
to support? Gonna call for the vote?
Absolutely. Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alani Inez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Would you like a letter drafted on these?
Oh, no.
Yes.
Okay, we can do that. Absolutely.
AB 3013, oh, yes. So this was not on our agenda, not available for us to discuss in our meeting in February. The executive committee wrote a response letter opposing AB 3013, and I testified on, April 10th. It did make it out of committee. It's now in appropriations, and we're waiting this week to see what will happen. But we should take an official, okay.
Yeah,
we'll put
current
that
position's
way.
opposed.
Yeah, so our official position is to oppose, and does anybody want to?
Why did you choose?
Oppose.
Why did you choose to oppose it?
3013?
Yeah, just in a nutshell.
Because it's allowing unlicensed activity. It's allowing, it's creating a new occupation that has no basis in education, in licensing and regulation. There's no, I mean, professions are based on stringent teaching and classes and testing and licensing, and there's none of that here.
And I move to oppose.
So I think, it's a consumer protection issue. This is not safe for the animals. So anyway, right now we have an opposed position. Does anybody want to discuss that any further, or Dr. Nunez?
It says that the physical rehabilitation is performed in certain settings. That probably means outside of a veterinary hospital, but it does say under the supervision of a supervising veterinarian.
So even in their They have amendments to this bill, and in the amendments, they threw in the word supervision or supervise, like every third word, but there is no provision for supervision. It is practiced by referral.
So does physical therapy still need to be prescribed?
It still needs to be prescribed.
And it still needs to be under the supervision of a veterinarian,
It does not fit our definition of supervision.
like direct versus,
They,
It does not fit any version of
they
supervision.
came forward with a number of amendments, and in the amendments, they redefined direct supervision and indirect supervision. And what they now call direct supervision is when the case goes to a off-site physical therapy entity, that's a direct supervision.
okay.
Even though there's no veterinarian on that, at that facility. There's also going to be a premises permit in the waiting room that says Veterinary Medical Board there. So the consumer, I see it as the consumer seeing this and saying, oh, this is regulated by the Veterinary Medical Board, so there's veterinary supervision here.
There's a
When
veterinarian
there's,
there,
when there's no veterinarian at all. They
But the
redefined
board,
this.
but the board does issue a permit for the premise.
Yes.
Yes.
Judy?
Well, this is the one Bill Gage has been working on, right? Isn't Bill Gage working on this bill?
This is on the assembly side.
It's on the assembly.
I'm getting, and I know that he's working hard to make this right. I think that we should do an oppose if amended or something, but I don't know that just out the gate oppose, because I think he's trying really hard to bring this together. I thought your opposition fell off, actually. Is this the only bill like this? Then that's the bill, this is the one Bill's working on. Why are you saying no? Can you come
Why is
up?
he working on it?
But
It's on the assembly side.
well, no, on the Senate side.
It's in the assembly side.
So it
It's on the s-
passed.
No, it's
It's
still in the assembly.
appropriations.
Oh,
It's not in the
It's
Senate
on
yet.
suspense.
it's on suspense in the assembly.
Kathy?
Judy, I will say, I've been following this one very closely as well, and there were attempts to amend this, which is what's up for a vote now, but those amendments do not conform with our consumer protection and the whole thing about supervision, not supervision. It's again, it may be trying to solve the problem, somebody's problem, but it's still, again, putting a round peg in a square hole, because for consumer protection, it's still very unclear where the consumer can go. And the amendments don't help, because the whole point of supervision in our world is supervision, but in this bill's world, it's referral, like a referral out to another practice, and that has no veterinary association. And the disciplinary work that we could do from a board is only remove that certificate, but it still leaves the physical therapist with a license, because they're licensed by the physical therapy board.
But it doesn't it fall on the vet, though? Isn't the vet responsible? They're not referring out to somebody who they wouldn't trust. They're referring out to somebody who they would trust.
Yeah, but it tasks the board, which causes a huge financial impact with creating the accreditation, licensing, and all the rest for this certificate.
So would it be a new accreditation by the Veterinary Medical Board?
Yeah.
Something
And
we have to create
and would
from
we
scratch.
oversee what training, and of course, if we give them a license, we're going to oversee what they, well, that's all good stuff.
it's not
That's
a
what I was
license.
asking for when we were doing this stuff in the first place.
It would ask us to create a new program.
Well, as long as there's money, we should do it. That's an answer.
There
There's
isn't
no
money.
It's
And we would-
all it is
There's
is
no
a cost.
money?
It significantly fiscally impacts.
Oh, that's why it's stuck in suspense.
Significantly.
Yes, okay, all right.
And it's,
So-
conflicts with our own ability right now, on the budget to inspect veterinary premises. We haven't had enough of that. So there are problems with this, but as it is now, I totally agree with the opposition.
I think Valerie wants to say something, no?
Okay, so so the executive committee had a opposed position. Any other discussion, and do you want to, you see a need to vote again? Or,
No, it sounds like
Okay.
it's not moving anyway.
yeah. Okay, so no motion there. We officially have an opposed position already. SB 1305, Glazer, emergency medical
Sorry,
services providers, dogs and cats immunity.
Cheryl?
I'm sorry.
The wording here states that the board has not adopted an official stance regarding this bill. Is that wrong? So this wording is wrong.
So, but we,
So what that means is, in the Administrative Procedures Manual, we give the Executive Committee authority to rule on a position.
And they did, okay.
So, yeah, and they did, and they bring back their position to the board for update. So
So
this
now
is the official position now.
So now it'll say,
that's the official
Yes.
position? Yeah, okay.
I see.
Thank you.
Good catch.
So you want 1305?
Yes.
So SB 1305, this has moved on to the Assembly. This would authorize emergency medical services to provide basic first aid to cats and dogs, among which would be administering oxygen, bandaging, and stopping bleeding.
Okay, Dick, do you want to talk any more about this one?
No. I will move to, well, it doesn't directly affect us, so I move to watch.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jennifer seconds. Any more discussion? Any other questions about this? Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, I would, my understanding is that this has been kind of worked out as to what can and can't be done, and has total support on the author's side and the support side, and the concerns that the veterinarians had. So I think it should move through smoothly.
Any comments from the public?
I think the only comment I have is that it says that to get them to the veterinarian, and then it says existing law veterinary practice act. Are we sure this is, why is it saying all this stuff about veterinary medicine if it's not something to do with us that we should take something more than a watch?
So
Seems like we
what-
should support.
The original bill did invade the scope of practice of veterinary medicine, and there was concern about what the first responders were going to be able to do. So at this point in time, it's give oxygen, apply pressure to control bleeding, and that's first aid skills that anybody can do. So we do not see that, or I don't see that as invading the scope of veterinary medicine. It's common sense. I don't even know how it has to be legislated, but I guess it does. Oh, it does because first responders are doing it.
Got it. All right, well, seems like
You
it would be a
can,
good
you
one
can
to
change
support.
it to a support.
Yeah, well, I would motion to support it. I mean, this seems like a really good thing. There's no opposition. It, does have something to do with veterinarians, bringing the animal to a veterinarian after you get it stable.
That,
That's still there.
no.
It's,
So we have a motion on the floor. so
yeah,
we have to,
to support. Why not?
the motion was to watch, and it was seconded, so we'd have to
Oh,
vote that down.
oh,
and make a
okay,
new
okay,
motion.
go ahead. I didn't know there was a second.
Yeah. Okay, so we have motion and no comments from the public, and call for the vote?
Okay, motion is to watch. Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Kathy Bowler?
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo?
Yes.
Judy Mancuso?
Sure.
And Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Alana Yanez?
Yes.
It's one less letter that he has to write.
Thank you.
All right, Ethan's on the notes.
Okay, SB 1441. So this bill, we did not know, I did not know about at our last meeting. And so this bill has also died, has not made it out of committee.
It died.
It died.
It died.
And
Died after Dick's testimony that the vet board was against it. I was there. I had a bill coming up right afterwards, and I was so shocked. It's like, here's Dick going up, hi, yeah, Dick Sullivan, Veterinary Medical Board, we're opposed to this. I'm like, what?
And so the executive committee, Dick and I, did meet, and we voted to oppose this on the basis that a medical procedure should not be in the criminal code.
Then you could have opposed and less amended. You don't have to just flat out oppose, plus we should have discussed it as a board. This is pretty
There
big.
wasn't time, the timing wasn't there.
Then we got to make some new rules. We do things by phone. We get, we have all of our announcements. We met over the executive officer.
And we didn't
We
know
could
about
have done it. I knew about it. I said something in our last meeting. It's going to
did
be
not
on
know about
whoever
it.
watches the video.
I did not know about it. I learned about it on a telephone call. It's either the end of March or the very beginning of April. That's when I learned about it. I had no idea before then. And as I understand, it was a spot bill. They kept it secret.
It was a spot bill.
They kept it secret.
Well, no, they were working on the language.
Well, they didn't tell us. So, anyway, we didn't know.
Can you explain a spot bill?
Somebody explain it better than me.
It's just like a placeholder. So you can say, this bill is going to help animals. Literally, it doesn't
It was
have to
very
say
vague.
anything.
It may have a totally different title or something. Okay.
And meanwhile, you're working with stakeholders and trying to come up with language. I had to do a bunch of spot bills this year. It's not ideal. You like to have your language ready to go, but with all the deadlines and stuff, sometimes you don't. But I had a mock-up, and I thought that it was in print, and I said to these guys, aren't we going to talk about the declaw bill? And you looked at me with a blank face, and you just kind of shook your head, and I thought, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, you showed up there and were against it. So, that's my side of the story.
Right. So what I would suggest is that we move our meetings back to having January and the beginning of April. So, because it seems
I
like all
agree.
this bill stuff happened
Yep.
in April.
Yep.
Because we got left out. And plus we got left out of AAVSP, but that's off agenda. But, so I would suggest moving our meetings back to the way they were. Because there were 15 bills that we were working on here. Dick and I did an inordinate amount of work. There was a 2-week period in April where I was in Sacramento 8 days out of the 14, and that was in 4 different trips.
Why
Just to deal with-
couldn't we have scheduled a phone meeting?
Wait.
Go ahead.
One thing, process-wise, it seems to me that at our regularly scheduled board meetings, really what we fairly should be considering is what is in print in terms of, other than a concept thing. And you're right, I'm not going to talk about the timing of our meetings, but I would feel very uncomfortable taking any kind of position on a bill that wasn't in print, in motion. And knowing even still how much we know they will be amended over time, it's also, a cautionary tale to take a position on something super early on. But I'm not going to get back to, I don't remember it at all. Even discussing it before, I didn't find out until quite late either. So I wasn't paying attention. But if it wasn't in print at our last meeting, I don't know how we would have, even the staff would have
I
put
think
it
it
forth
was.
to us.
I think it was.
If you look at the bill language, you can tell that it was introduced as a non-substantive spot bill on February 16, which is only 5 days
Our meeting was the
before our
20
meeting, which wouldn't have been on the agenda because we need 10.
Right.
And then April 2nd is
But
when the
didn't we have a
substance
call-in? Didn't we do our executive officer thing or something, the
That was
pot thing or
March.
some? That was March?
That was
No, we
early
didn't. It was
March.
the executive officer.
It was March
Right.
6th.
Wasn't that April?
March
I
8th.
did not know about it at that time.
Well, it was in print April 2nd.
April 2nd, which
So
was
we could have
after.
addressed it on that call.
No, we couldn't have, because what Kathy's saying is the language wasn't in print until
That's the
April
problem.
2nd.
That's
But
kind of
I
the
thought our
problem with the
meeting was
system.
after April 2nd.
You have to have a 10-day notice.
March is before.
No, March
April
was when we
2nd.
had the call.
Oh, it was March?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was
Yeah.
April.
Dr. Nunez?
So
Thank you, Tara.
we-
March is before.
We
Yeah,
we
we had a call
nominate,
March.
we nominate and we vote for our president and for our vice president, and I fully support their ability to make decisions on our behalf in between meetings, but there's always the opportunity for them to report what they've decided and an opportunity for the board to vote as a board on whether or not we want to change that decision. So instead of wasting time talking about what happened, if we want to change the opinion, let's change it. If we don't, then let's move on.
Well, we need to change it because we killed it, and I think there's members of this board that would have liked to have not seen the vet board kill that bill.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This is, I've worked closely with Dr. Jennifer, and she put together the PAW Project documentary. It's illegal in Los Angeles, and I believe it's illegal in 8 cities in the state of
And more
California.
countries just this past
And
week.
Nova Scotia, British Columbia, Canada, I mean, this is an inhumane practice. I think we need to,
And we could have
follow
fought it out
suit.
with you guys,
And-
but at least we would have had that dialogue,
Make a
and.
Yes,
motion.
I understand. I
All right,
understand.
so the
But it's
motion
moot,
has to
though.
be that if you guys take a position that maybe
Wait,
you
wait.
email us or something and we can
No.
look at it and bless it.
We
That's
can't-
a point of order problem, because right now we're just talking
Make a
about
motion on
1441, which
Yes.
is dead.
Why
Which is
can't, it's dead.
So it's
Yeah.
really-
it's going to come back.
They killed it.
I mean,
yeah, and then we'll talk about it, yeah.
That's my point.
you can still have an opinion on a dead bill, can't you?
Can we,
It's dead.
is there any point to do anything else?
There's
Okay.
no point in anything.
Okay.
The bill's dead, thanks
Yep.
to us, who wasn't even, we weren't all on board there. I almost fell out of my chair. I looked at him. You saw me look at you, Dr. Miller. I'm like, we didn't vote on this.
Okay, are we ready to move on?
No.
Now, are you ready to move on?
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. SB 1480, the omnibus bill,
Right.
which I heard may not be so omnibus now.
It is. It is held in suspense and appropriations in the House of Origin. There's a fiscal impact. This bill the provisions were discussed preliminarily at our last meeting. Among some of the changes were mandatory hospital inspections at 20%. The veterinary allowed tasks to be an RVT. We're going to repeal that with some disclosures. The UC Davis students will have some protections to practice veterinary medicine, and it will allow the board to offer conditional licenses to our veterinary assistant controlled substance permit holders. One item that was added to this bill that was not previously noted was the drug counseling language was added by the chief consultant of the BMP committee, so that's also in this bill. And as I said, it's currently in appropriation suspense, and staff requests the board consider a position on this bill.
Dr. Sullivan?
I don't know if you mentioned, but it also includes the ability to a veterinarian to prescribe medication within 25 miles of a disaster
Right, that's right. Yeah, you're right. I did skip that one.
without establishing a VCPR.
The emergency care, yeah.
So we don't have a board position, we should vote on this one.
Her had her hand up.
And Jennifer, yes?
I was just clarifying with Tara, this was also in our closed session for tomorrow. It gives us the ability to issue probationary VA-CSPs, which we
That's-
don't
Yes.
have that now.
Very important to help keep our AG costs down, get people licensed, because they tend to
Yeah.
have certain criminal acts.
And do you want to talk about the one thing that got left out?
Yeah, there was discussion on, let's see, which one was that?
The managing licensee?
Yeah, right, thank you. The responsibility of a managing licensee and owner when the board disciplines a premises was left out. We did email the committee that we wanted this language in, somehow got left out, where I'm in discussion with the committee to try to get that provision back in, because that wasn't supported back in February. So that is not currently in this bill at this time.
Dr. Nunez?
Should we be concerned about the drug counseling language that was added? What exactly?
Well, so it was going to be a regulation, and they'd asked to add it. We agreed to that. The language is identical to what was proposed for regulation. It's now going to be in statute.
It was proposed and then it was
It
taken
it
out.
was, it
and
was
now it's back
approved
in?
by the board to move forward with the regular regulatory rulemaking process, noticing, OAL, all that stuff. And there was a request by the BMP committee to move that into this bill.
So the drug counseling is providing information on drug
Yes.
adverse effects?
Yes, when a drug's been prescribed.
Well, there's things besides adverse
Right,
effects.
generally,
Right.
that's correct.
Yes. There's about 5.
So that's back in? Okay. It
Yes.
was out before, wasn't it?
But
It
it's
was- it was in
changed
there,
from
was
what-
out, now it's in.
It's changed from what it was originally. Originally, it was like 20 things, and now we've
Yeah.
got it down to 5 things.
Okay.
And then it moved to
Based
regulations.
on the board
we
discussion,
got
yes.
Regulations. Solomon Stoop didn't think that was going fast enough, so he got it moved to B&P to put it in statute.
But we're okay with the 5 things?
What are we going to do?
Do you know what those 5 things are?
Yeah, they're in here. They're in the list.
They are.
They're,
It's
1480.
page 7.
Wait, are we on the bill or the?
In the bill
Yeah, okay.
itself, page 7, starting with line 6.
What letter is that? Oh, right here?
Oh,
Letter N, letter N.
Page 7 of the bill.
Oh, right.
Starting with line 6.
Yes, page 7. So the name and description of the dangerous drug, route of administration, dosage form, dosage, duration of drug therapy, duration effect, common severe adverse effects. So that's all labeled as number 2. Any special directions for proper use and storage, actions to be taken in the event of a missed dose, and if available, precautions and relevant warnings provided by the drugs manufacturer.
So all this has to be provided by the veterinarian?
if they ask, if the
If-
client asks.
Well,
Well,
some are
it
mandatory.
shall
but-
be, yes. You have
Yeah.
to offer it. You have to offer it.
Like at the drug documentation, if requested. Or if available.
So it can be verbal, it can be written.
Well, and some of it is, some of this information is on the drug label, so it's stuff beyond that.
Yes.
A lot of it is. I don't think actions to be taken in the event of a missed dose is on any drug label.
No.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
No, not yet.
I move to support
Second.
our bill.
We have a motion second. Any other discussion on the board? Any comments from the public?
Can I ask some clarification from Ethan?
Yes.
Would you reiterate what you just said about consulting with them about adding the verbiage? What did, can you
Right,
remind
so
me?
right before Anne Marie had left, she had sent an email to the chief consultant asking, to add the language per the conversation they'd had previously. When we found out that that had not been added, I've reached out to the office again and asked whether we could make sure that gets in per our agreed upon conversation previously.
Okay.
So TBD.
But is the likelihood of it getting in before it gets out of the Senate? It's on suspense now,
Yeah, in
right?
appropriations right now.
So, okay, and that deadline's Friday, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm likely, but we have another house to make the change in.
Uh,
That's the point.
Okay. Call for the vote?
Okay, Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Nolan.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
Alani Yanez.
Yes. Motion passes. SB 1491, another omnibus bill. And Ethan will do an update again.
So, yeah, similar to the other 1480, we discussed the outline of this proposal to be able to administer the veterinary law exam by electronic means. That is in this bill, and that's it as far as the impact to the board. And let me see what the status is. sorry. It's off to the Assembly, and staff is requesting the board consider a position.
Motion to support?
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Call for the vote?
Absolutely. Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler,
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo,
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Alana Yanez.
Yes.
And we made it through our 15 legislative bills.
Woo, 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 woo.
Okay, agenda item number 8, discussion regarding the AAVSB draft policy on telehealth, possible board action to adopt position or comment on AAVSB draft telehealth policy. And Dr. Sullivan is going to discuss this.
Well, we don't have a vote on the draft policy because we don't have that from AAVSB yet. But we did send them the letter that we had at our last meeting, and my report is just on the response. Mr. Penrod is the executive director of AAVSB and responded to Anne Marie's letter and then our letter, her cover letter and our letter. And he said, "I will pass along your board's comments to the Regulatory Policy Task Force. It may be difficult to share comments with all boards due to the volume of comments. I will take a look at this and determine the best way to share perspectives." She also asked if I could be appointed to that committee, so we didn't get a response on that, so I guess the answer is no. I did get an email this past week from a staff person that said I couldn't be appointed this year, but my name will be on the list for next year. So that's the end of the report.
Yes, Kathy?
Did you want to add what Jim sent to me about, just as a point of information, that there were 280 other comments they received from across the country, and that they will be meeting in early June to consider comments and make revisions to the draft policy. It's from AAVSB. Oh, and at the annual meeting in September of AAVSB, there's going to be a special session dedicated to the policy to collect additional input and to collect additional input in September. So that's the overall.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Any comments from the public? So no vote to be taken here, but speaking of what Kathy just talked about, so review and select delegates to the AAVSB annual meeting in Washington DC in September. So my understanding is the AAVSB will fund 2 delegates. That's usually the EO and the board president, and I am planning on going. So Kathy, I have a question. Does the ICVA fund your trip?
Yes.
Okay.
Or some,
That's separate.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm already taken care of.
Should we send Jennifer? RVT? No.
No, this is not.
We're going to send Joe.
And there's a process by which we have to submit the request to travel out of state that is, it has been approved in the past. In fact, last year was approved and then taken back because of a trip to Texas.
All right.
The governor had asked that we don't travel to Texas, but they seem to be approving these. The request has been submitted, so we're hoping that that is
For
approved
DC?
by the governor's office
Oh.
for the EO to travel to Washington DC.
Got it.
In the past, I know the only time I've been, the EO was there as well, so Anne Marie went. Is that typically it's the EO and the board president?
That's
if-
correct.
If the president can go?
Right, and
Okay.
they fund it, so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'm
Okay.
planning on going, so.
Good.
See you there, Kathy.
Will you bring us back souvenirs?
Do we need to designate?
I will.
What are the dates again? Do you have dates on that?
September, it's the middle of September, September
Yeah.
13th to
Yeah,
15th.
Somewhere in
something
that,
like that.
and it's usually where we,
Is it gonna
so do
be-
we need to
gonna
designate
be
that's
cold?
the EO, the new EO?
What's the weather
that
like in
does
September?
right now?
Not that bad, that just happened. I mean,
weather.
that's what we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
because aren't we supposed to name the delegates by a certain date? from, as far as the AAVSB is?
Yeah, I will reply to their email. Respond, it'll go in.
No.
Okay, wait,
Okay.
so what's,
I was just clarifying that I thought there was a deadline to name the delegates from each state, and,
you'll take care of that, Ethan?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
and he'll reply, yeah.
Oops.
So I got an email asking to register, so I still need to register separately, or will that,
Let me look into it.
okay,
I'll get back to
let
you.
me know.
Yeah.
Okay, agenda item number 10, review and discuss the AVMA concerns regarding the FDA's proposed changes to drug compounding guidelines. Possible board action to adopt position or comment on FDA drug compounding guidelines. And Dr. Sullivan is going to discuss this one. He's a busy guy.
So the U.S. Pharmacopoeia is a compendium of drug information. It is a nonprofit organization that establishes standards for medications, both prescription and OTC drugs, and other things. They also establish guidelines for sterile compounding, non-sterile compounding products, and hazardous compounding products. We used this standard when writing our regulations for veterinary compounding by using the UPS 795 categories of simple, moderate, and complex compounding. That was the basis of our argument with the Pharmacy Board. Recently, Dr. Grant Miller of the CVMA office noticed that USP was rewriting their guidelines for 795 non-sterile compounding. And we immediately noticed that the proposed update, in the proposed update, they have eliminated the categories and put all compounding under one standard. And that standard is so involved that a regular veterinary clinic doing simple compounding could not comply with. Since this was a national issue, we contacted AVMA to see what the best approach is to explore our concerns. And obviously, California is the only one that had concerns because that's where we are. We subsequently had a conference call with Dr. Gigi Davidson, who is a compounding pharmacist in North Carolina, I think at the university, with AVMA. Val, Grant, and myself were on the call to address this issue. And we have another conference call scheduled in June and I think it is actually with the USP committee. So I just wanted to update you on what is going on. There's a couple of avenues that we have. In the sterile compounding, an introductory comment actually excludes clinicians from those guidelines. So that's one avenue. We may be able to get that verbiage in on the non-sterile compounding also. If that fails, then our backup is they're probably going to propose a whole new chapter just on veterinary compounding. And although that's good, it also we may lose some control on the conditions of those compounding. So I'll keep you informed and let you know what's going on with that. It could, and the reason this is important is the U.S. Pharmacopoeia is an independent organization that sets up these guidelines, and Food and FDA oftentimes just adopts those as their guidelines, which then, if you want to contest it, you're going to be in court, and it would be very difficult to win a case that has USP and FDA approval on the methods. So we're addressing it, and hopefully we can get a response at the next meeting, but it may go on.
Dr. Nunez.
Why do you think we would lose control if there was a separate veterinary chapter?
Because to this point, we do not believe that there's any veterinarians on USP, and there's definitely no clinicians because they would not let this go by. I mean, there isn't a day go by that most clinicians aren't doing some form of compounding, and there's just no practicality in these regulations. They're made for pharmacies that are doing complex and compounding. That's all their job is compounding. Our facet is just one little,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
yeah.
But you don't think if they went to the trouble of making a new chapter, they would
I
get
think,
veterinarians to get involved?
well, I would hope they would, but even then, I think they would try to micromanage. I mean, what we see in the new form is a real micromanaging, cleaning the roof every 3 months.
Yeah. No, I've seen those.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
And we were able to carve out the simple compounding because they gave an example in veterinary medicine. So that's what we grabbed and that's what we used, and we were able to, get okay from Board of Pharmacy of California. And,
I'm glad you're on the job.
well,
Yeah, no kidding. He really does do a lot. And so this compounding pharmacist you mentioned, she's at the veterinary school?
I don't know. I think she is at the veterinary school, but I was assuming she was a veterinarian. Grant says that she's not, so.
Val is shaking her head no.
She's not at the veterinary school?
She's at the veterinary school, but she's not a veterinarian.
Is she at the veterinary school?
Yes, she's just not a veterinarian.
Yeah, she's like, yeah.
And she happens to be the chair of the committee that's writing these
Oh, good.
regulations.
Well, you got a good ear then.
Yeah.
Send
Well,
her
hopefully.
flowers.
Yeah. Chocolates. Any other questions from the board?
Under a certain-
Any questions from the public, comments? Agenda item number 11, proposed regulations. And so Ethan will get us through the status of pending regulations and explain why it's taking so long.
Can I have a question first?
Yes, Dr. Nunez has a question
Did you
first.
do this, Ethan?
Don't you like that?
I love it. I love it.
Amanda did that. She did a great job.
Amanda,
Love
good
it.
job.
That is beautiful. That's
So
amazing.
veterinarians in general are very visual. So we like graphics, we like visual things.
Stupid prune.
It's beautiful.
It's
Thank
very
you.
good. So we're trying to illustrate where we're at and the multitude of steps for a regulatory package to go through. And I included also, this is from department training manual that lists all the steps, the pre-review, post-notice, pre-notice and post-notice steps. You can see the list is extensive.
It's the 25 steps,
There's a few.
25.
That
Yeah.
part I didn't like as much. Too much information.
Right.
I like this one better.
So, okay. So as far as our regulations, with Amanda, it's great work, and also Tara, we have 3 regulatory packages at DCA getting reviewed before we notice, so those are moving along. And you can see, obviously, we have many in our queue. Next up, to focus on our disciplinary guidelines and RVT education, and you should be hearing hopefully about the noticing of the other regulations. So, if you have any questions, though, on the status of any of these, I'm here to answer questions.
Well, I do, if anybody doesn't have their hand up. So I noticed that they're kind of always stopped in the same place, right? Submitted to DCA for pre-review. So is this next step notice published by OAL, is that a bottleneck, or is that something that you have to wait on, or why are a lot of them in that situation?
It's just a snapshot in time, honestly. It's not
So
necessarily a
not
bottleneck per
it's
se,
just
but
coincidental?
we do have, there's 4 distinct documents we have to submit to get the regulation noticed. So those go through the proper legal channels to make sure we're on point. And the end game is to make sure that it's a clean process through the Office of Administrative Law and we don't get disapprovals. We want to make sure we do the good work on the front end.
Right.
And then we're ready to go once it's ready for,
So it gets held up there just because of the sheer amount of stuff you got to get ready for them, and.
yeah, there's a pre-review and then there's
Right.
a pre-review.
Yeah.
And then the notice kicks off the 45-day comment period.
Yes, I'll never forget the 22-page rejection on the Pet Lovers Plate one, yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid that stuff.
Dr. Nunez.
So there should, just to, talking about clean language, on that proposed language,
Or we're not there yet, but it's
Okay.
going.
wait.
Calm down.
Could I clarify something on the first page of the regulation status. This has been updated since printing, so Judy, you mentioned that things are getting stuck in the DCA pre-review. Perhaps I'm a little defensive about that, because that starts with me. But all three packages, fee schedule, CPEI, and telemedicine, have been approved through the pre-review process, and now they're at the initial analysis stage. That still lands with the Division of Legal Affairs, but I can say that the biggest lift has been accomplished for those three packages. So
Awesome.
I don't believe there are any other packages right now pending with my office. So all three of them are moving.
We're off and running. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item. So our reg, section 2069, Article 6, Division 20, Title 16.
This should be on our website.
So Ethan will
So-
kind of give the overview of this.
This is one we saw at the last meeting. We had discussed and debated the proposed language. The direction from the board was to have legal counsel research the use of the term pharmacological agents and a drug or drugs, quote unquote. Tara did that research. Her comments are in the attached proposed language. Additionally, sub 3 under B was added at the board meeting in February. So that is also reflected in the proposed mock-up.
So effectively, I'm reporting back that the question was whether or not to use pharmacological agents within the reg or change it to some other phrase such as controlled substances. What I confirmed was the statute 4836.1, that's Business and Professions Code, authorizes administration of drugs and controlled substances, both of which are defined in that section. So the appropriate terminology to use would be drug or controlled substance rather than pharmacological agents. And then, so those two changes are shown in subdivision B1 and 2. And then I'm also recommending that we add DPC section 4836.1 to the reference section of this proposed regulation to clarify the Drug Controlled Substance Administration Authority of RVTs and statute.
So next step would be for the board to obviously discuss, but if you want to move on, the notice would occur post pre-review, but it would delegate staff to initiate a rulemaking action.
Dr. Nolan?
I may be wrong, but I think we're missing the letter A. Under, if you go down to the administration of, and you took out the pharmacological agents, is that A there and just not crossed out? Is that a drug? So
I think A's up at the top under
there's the A.
emergency.
is the A right there? I just want to
Yeah,
make sure
there
that A
needs to be a
is
space, yeah.
there. Okay.
Are you talking about under subdivision B1?
E1, yeah, A.
A is sitting there right after pharmacological
Not
agents and
crossed out.
strikeout.
Looks crossed out in mine. Okay, good. Just
Right here.
clarification. I've a question mark there on my notes. Is that A still there? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Man, I want to send you everything I have. to
So I have a question of,
before it goes out.
how are these RVTs that are going to rodeos or other sporting events, how are they accessing the controlled drugs?
It was.
The RVTs are getting them from under their supervising veterinarians, DEA permit or other such authority. So when the veterinarian is not attending, the RVT is dispatched to the rodeo with a certain number of drugs and under written orders, then administers the care as necessary.
Judy?
I know that one of the problems that we've had in the past is getting the proper reporting from the rodeos.
Rodeo.
And I know Eric Mills has been here a million times asking us to do better with that. Has there been any incidences?
That's a different agenda item.
I
isn't
know,
it, Tara?
well, yeah, it's related to this. I wondered if it, okay, so maybe we could put it on the agenda to get the latest reports next time or something. But, yeah, okay.
Any further discussion? Dr. Sullivan?
This is regs, yeah. I move that we move these regulations forward.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, and do we need to do the,
Yeah. I will read the entire 45-day motion language. The motion is to approve the proposed regulatory changes, direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, authorize the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period, and if no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, adopt the proposed regulatory changes.
okay. We have a motion, a second, a long motion, and a second. Any any comments from the public? Okay, call for the vote.
Absolutely. Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Kathy Bowler?
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo?
Yes.
Judy Mancuso?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Alani Inez?
Motion carries. On to our next reg, Section 2036, Article 4, Division 20, Title 16 of the CCRs regarding tasks RVTs may perform under indirect supervision. So this is moving casting and splinting.
So similar to the previous item, something that the board discussed and debated last meeting, landed on asking council to research specifically on this one, the history of RVT delegated tasks. That research was done and is in the item. Basically, it was an evolution from a larger list to more pared down than we see today. And essentially the language that was agreed upon at the February meeting is before the board for your consideration.
Jennifer, do you have any comments?
So what do we need to do to move it forward? I like it.
Okay, any other
Motion.
comments?
Motion.
You Make a motion then.
I'll only request that, there's a numbering issue with 2036 sub B. So as amended to that too, we're going to amend that.
Oh, because they didn't get renumbered?
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, move to do what Ethan said.
awesome.
Second.
So you're going to perform dental extractions as 2, 3, and 4, is that what you're talking about?
Yep,
Yeah.
correct.
And then C1 and 2 is correct.
Yes.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Nancy?
I commented last time that when you read this, it says the following procedures may be performed by, an RVT may perform the following procedures under indirect supervision of a licensed veterinarian, and there are 2 job tasks listed here. And these are 2 of thousands of procedures that RVTs can do under indirect supervision, or maybe hundreds. And so I had suggested that we try to come up with different wording so that it doesn't look like this is an inclusive list. I've been racking my brain ever since the last meeting trying to come up with other wording, and I have not been able to do it. And I've just about given up the idea and hope that people don't use the Practice Act as their reference, because this is very unhelpful. I was hoping that perhaps someone else could come up with a better way to word it. The only thing that I could come up with was if you change C to read, only an RVT may perform the following procedures, or a veterinarian may delegate only to an RVT the following procedures, and then you remove administer controlled substances and just leave casts and splints. That's the only idea that I came up with, but that doesn't work so well with D.
So,
Right, and the point is that because these specific items are listed with certain supervision requirements under RVTs, this works in conjunction with 2036.5, I believe, which says that veterinary assistants may perform any of the animal healthcare tasks unless they are specifically listed under 2036 A, B, or C.
right, and that works fine for somebody who is studying the Practice Act, but if somebody just says, oh, what can I let an RVT do? Or what can I let a veterinary assistant do? And then they look at this, it's confusing, because perhaps if D said an RVT may perform other animal health care tasks, instead of just saying may perform animal health care tasks.
Well, it starts off with subject to.
Right.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, the Practice Act is not for the novice. I mean, you know, if they're picking and choosing, they're in the wrong manual. So there are things that we can and can't do, and moving things around. I mean, if you're reading this, you've got to read the whole section, not just pick and choose. And if they're just picking and choosing, I don't think it is our fault. I think they have to look at the whole context, and I don't see a problem with this.
And I can see Nancy's concern, but again, my interpretation might be different. I read it as these are things, the biggest thing for me is moving, casting, and splinting down to indirect. That's the big part of it, and I don't see it as these are the only two things we can perform. Again, if you read the entire section, that's the way I see it.
Well, as I've said, I don't know that there is a solution, so I'm concerned that this is going to lead to confusion.
I would only add that since 1982, the regulation itself has been structured in this way. So raising the concern at this point, just because we're moving one item from direct supervision to indirect supervision is tough, because initially, really, we're just talking about a task, but now you're talking about restructuring the entire regulation, which has been in effect for over 30 years.
Well, actually, this section, in the indirect supervision section, was only added after veterinary assistants were able to administer controlled substances. There never used to be an indirect supervision section. The C didn't exist before 2007.
Sure, but this has been structured in this way for that long. And as we added controlled substances for permit holders, and we needed to do something about RVTs to just clarify that they can administer controlled substances under certain circumstances, this was added, but B and C were already there.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is just that this is always,
C wasn't there.
for over 30 years, this has been about just adding a few animal healthcare tasks with designated supervision as needed. So just moving one item from direct down to indirect is helpful, because that expands the access of clients and their animals to RVT, casts and splints under indirect supervision.
Was there
Any
a
other comments from the
motion?
public?
Oh, no, was there a motion? Oh.
Okay.
Is there a motion and a second?
Yes.
Oh, that's
There
right,
was,
there is, yeah,
okay.
motion and second. And it was, Kathy, did you second? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read the 45-day notice? Okay.
Yes.
So the motion is to approve the proposed regulatory changes, direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, authorize the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period, and if no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, adopt the proposed regulatory changes.
Okay, another very long motion. Call for the vote.
All righty. Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Nolan.
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Alana Yanez.
Yes.
Excellent.
Motion passes, and we already did our third reg. We did that when Dr. Klingborg was here. So on to agenda item number 12, public comments for items not on the agenda.
Wow, nobody? That's a first. Isn't that a first?
Um,
It's gotta be something.
So I think we should, and I'm not sure this is even something we need to put on the agenda, but moving our meeting schedule back to January, April, so on. If that's,
Carol, do we just vote on it, or do you just,
Why can't we just do it?
or do you just, yeah?
I
do
think
you-
we just put it on the agenda for next
Yeah,
time.
the minutes themselves could reflect that the future agenda meeting dates, or the future meeting dates should be scheduled in January and April.
Got it.
Wait, there's another item on the agenda that talks about topics for future meetings, right? Is that what?
Yeah.
That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow.
Don't let me forget to put the rodeo statistics on there.
I believe you also mentioned the ambulances.
Yeah, that's Mark's, but I second that.
But we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
but let's not forget.
Oh, my goodness, are we done?
It's kind of crazy, but
I
we
know.
are.
I know. Is there a motion?
No, don't you just?
I motion to adjourn.
Okay,
No,
we're
we're
just,
not adjourning.
the recess.
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 No motion for that, you
Okay.
just recess.
We just
Jamie
recess. Okay.
second.
We're in recess until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Okay.